about this stuff. He's been on this show before. Then a little later, we're going to get to the team from Fright Nights. We're going to talk about ghostly experiences, how they happen, where they happen, and how you can go and see them and experience them with them. And in hour two, we'll get an update on the Mars One project. The founder, Bas Lansdorp, we've had him exclusively on this show before. He's going to be exclusively again on this show. They've had their problems, their issues, but Bas Lansdorp will tell us tonight that they are getting there. And when I say there, I mean the Red Planet. It's going to happen. Some people said maybe it won't. Maybe they'll run out of money. Maybe they'll run out of interest. Bas Lansdorp is here tonight exclusively to tell us no, the Mars One project is on track and they're going there. And the people who will do the going are being selected at this moment. We'll tell you how tonight. In hour three, the head of SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, Seth Shostak, is on with a 2018 update on the search for whatever may be out there, if indeed there is anything. You can connect with us anytime on 0344 499 1000 by phone, at Talk Radio on Twitter, or you can text us at Talk, and then a space and your message to 87222. So get set for resourcefully rapid-fire rollercoaster randomized reality radio for Sunday night. This is The Unexplained. Dateline March 25th, 2018.
The Unexplained with Howard Hughes.
Stand by your beds. In a little while, we'll talk with Mike Godfrey from Insignia as part of the news, but I want to get to some other stuff before we do that, including the fate of Omar Mua, that cigar-shaped piece of rock. But haven't we just? Okay, let's get into the news then. From The Sun yesterday, thanks to Jonathan for this, Jonathan, thank you. UFO hunters claim to have found a mile-high underwater alien structure located exactly in line with the pyramids in Egypt. The gigantic skyscraper, which enthusiasts also believe is inhabited by aliens, for good measure, was spotted at the bottom of the Pacific when they zoomed in on Google Earth. There it is again. Author Shefket of the site Perfect Edition said most believe it's not a natural structure, but what is it? Because nothing's ever been discovered that remotely resembles it on Earth, said this person. He said, for firm believers of the hollow Earth theory, this is, quote, final proof. They needed to prove its existence. UFO hunters now believe this tower to be part of a global network of gigantic structures used by ancient advanced civilizations to transmit and receive energy across great distances. No country has yet to make an official statement on this discovery. This is according to the Sun newspaper yesterday, which seems a little bit odd, let alone send an exploration team. It's a quote, hollow Earth conspiracy theorists believe the Earth is hollow or empty and that superior alien beings live inside it. So there we have it, a gigantic skyscraper, a mile-high underwater structure in line with the pyramids in Egypt, we are told. Thanks to Patrick from the Daily Mail, China's out-of-control space station, the one that we've been talking about for the last few weeks, will crash into Earth this coming Easter weekend, i.e. next week, according to the European Space Agency. The agency's Space Debris Office says that Tianzhong-1 will hit somewhere across our planet's northern hemisphere between March the 30th and April the 2nd. Previous estimates suggested the rogue station, which is carrying highly toxic chemicals, would enter Earth's orbit on the 3rd of April. According to experts tracking the station, it has the highest chance of crashing along a narrow strip along latitudes 43 degrees north and south. This includes a number of highly populated cities, including New York, Barcelona, Beijing, Chicago, Istanbul, Rome, and Toronto. Crash date estimates were highly variable, said the European Space Agency. At no time will a precise time and location prediction be possible, they say. But, it appears that it's going to be reasonably safe for almost all of us. There is a small chance, we are told, though, that parts of the station containing hazardous hydrazine could plummet into a highly populated sea. Entrepreneur Elon Musk has had the official Facebook pages for his Tesla and SpaceX companies deleted. So this is where we're going to be talking with Mike Godfrey in just a little while about this. This is to do with Facebook. Of course, which we've talked about in the news this week. But Elon Musk, as you would have heard yesterday, has had the official Facebook pages for his Tesla and SpaceX companies deleted. The delete Facebook movement has grown after data firm Cambridge Analytica was accused of, which it denies, obtaining the personal information of about 50 million users. Mr. Musk had poked fun at speaker brand Sonos after it said it would suspend advertising on Facebook for 1 week. His followers challenged him to have his own company's page deleted, which he did within minutes. Mr. Musk said he didn't realize that his SpaceX brand had a Facebook page in the first place. Literally, I've never seen it, he wrote on Twitter. But he's deleted that and the one for Tesla, which some people used to use, those with deep pockets and Tesla cars, for connecting with the company itself. In 2016, Facebook used SpaceX to launch a new communications satellite valued at more than £150 million. So it's been kind of valuable to them, but they're not going to be on there for the moment. First on this story, then, let's hear the thoughts of techno-sociologist Zeynep Tufekci in one of the TED Talks from this week.
What we need to fear most is not what artificial intelligence will do to us on its own, but how the people in power will use artificial intelligence to control us and to manipulate us in novel, sometimes hidden, subtle, and unexpected ways. Much of the technology that threatens our freedom and our dignity in the near-term future is being developed by companies in the business of capturing and selling our data and our attention to advertisers and others. Facebook, Google, Amazon, Alibaba, Tencent. Now, artificial intelligence has started bolstering their business as well. And it may seem like artificial intelligence is just the next thing after online ads. It's not. It's a jump in category. It's a whole different world. And it has great potential. It could accelerate our understanding of many areas of study and research. But to paraphrase a famous Hollywood philosopher, with prodigious potential come prodigious risk.
Okay, that was Zeynep Tufekci. She is a techno-sociologist talking about the future of data harvesting and why we need to be maybe a little concerned about this. All of this, of course, fits in with the backdrop of what happened with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. Of course, everybody denying any wrongdoing. But there is the big issue of when you sign up for something, and maybe you click OK to the terms and conditions, and off you go. You function with that particular piece of technology, that particular purchasing site, whatever it might be. And you think everything's going to be hunky-dory. Well, someone somewhere is watching you. Now, I think these days that's not a mega surprise for most of us. We know that in order to have what being online gives you, and what being on Facebook and other social media platform gives you, you have to give a little something of yourself. If you're not giving them money, then you have to make yourself susceptible to targeted advertising. And to an extent, and the question is what extent, you have to agree to allow some of that nice data that you are providing with yourself, even if from yourself, even if you don't know you're doing it, to be deployed by third parties. It's a game. It's like a football match, you know. It's you concede a bit and you get a bit. Problem is the action all in one half of the pitch at the moment. This is a terrible sporting analogy. Let's talk about these issues and also a thing called Cybergeddon with my friend Mike Godfrey from Insignia.co.uk, who are ethical hackers and people who know about this stuff. Mike, thank you for coming on.
Evening, Howard.
So, Mike, first of all, in the light of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica story, which sets a backdrop for all of this, it's been discussed to death everywhere else, so we won't specifically talk about that. Where are we at now with, us seeding data to major organizations, and where are we at vis-a-vis what they do with it?
Well, I think it's a good and a bad thing. So it's bad that this has happened. It's bad that people have potentially been manipulated, but it's good that it's brought this to the attention of the public. Because the reality is that whoever you give your data to on the internet are responsible for either giving that data away through form of a cyber attack and not encrypting things properly, or through weaponizing your data to target attacks towards you. So yeah, definitely, it's a huge thing with what's happened, and like I said, it's kind of a double-edged sword, really. But definitely good that people are talking about it, and that people are becoming more aware of where they're putting their data, and more importantly, how that data is being used. So yeah, that's kind of my view on it initially.
And what about this Delete Facebook campaign that has grown up and now has the support of, Mr. Technology? We've read about his salary this week. Elon Musk, SpaceX man, Tesla man of the moment. If he's got behind this, then do you think that this will have any traction? And if it does have any traction, what might it achieve?
Well, I've spoken about this quite a lot over the last week or so, and And for me, this is a terrible thing for people to be deleting Facebook. And the reason why is because Facebook's whole model is on time invested. So Facebook look at things like how they can notify you of any kind of small trivial thing to get you to buy into Facebook and, more importantly, to spend time on it. So the first thing that they do when you delete Facebook is actively try to get you back on it. And they do that for a number of ways, through tagging you in your friends' posts, etc., and your friends trying to tag you in things when obviously now they're unable to. So I think it's good that, like I said, people are standing up to it and people are taking some sort of action against it. It does worry me what form of tactics Facebook are going to use to get people back on, as they have done for a long time. So Facebook have always adopted quite invasive tactics, and one of those was one that people don't know, is that everybody's got a profile on Facebook. So as soon as one of your family members puts a picture of you on Facebook, it automatically tags you through facial recognition. So if you sign up to Facebook for the first time ever, it will present you with a number of pictures that friends and family have tagged, and it tries to get you to build associations, not because it wants you to stay in touch with your family, of course that's part of it, but they want you to invest your time in Facebook, and they want it to be as an enjoyable and kind of streamlined experience as possible. So that's really what worries me. I do kind of feel like it's us and them when it comes to technology companies and the way they use data, and that's my biggest concern on that.
I saw on the way in tonight, there was, and I think it was on Yahoo News or maybe AOL News, and I only saw the headline literally as I was getting off a train. And that headline was something along the lines of that social media sites, and it may well have been Facebook, are actually aware of your texts and your phone traffic. If you've got Facebook or a social media site on your phone, then your texts and your phone calls may be tracked. Could that be possible? Does that sound likely?
Definitely, yeah. So the way that Facebook Messenger links into your phone calls, now basically Facebook have actively tried to do this for a while, so is WhatsApp. So if you ever remember making WhatsApp calls on an iPhone, they'd never actually appear in your call log. So people have been trying to interconnect, and when I say people, technology companies especially, they've been trying to connect phones with VoIP calling as well. But part of the main issue with that, when we actually look around that situation, is that when you go onto Facebook and it has what's called suggested friends, so it gives you people to potentially add. And I started seeing people that I've got no connection to whatsoever, other than the fact that there's telephone numbers in my phone book, and it started suggesting these people to me. So I was thinking, this is extremely invasive. And when I actually looked at it, sure enough, it is going through your contacts, and it matches that contact up with a profile, and then suggests that profile to you.
But of course, it will only do that if you allow it to, and when you install the app for Messenger, whatever, then you will be asked a number of things. We want access to your camera, we want access to your phone, we want access to this and that, and you have to check those things. Most of us just skip right through and say, that's fine, because we want the functionality. Are you saying that we need to be a little bit more selective about what we agree to, or is it maybe a little more insidious than that?
Well, this is the thing. This is where it gets really dodgy, to be honest, and I use that word cautiously, but it really is, because when you look at what you can actually strip down, you can't strip down much of it and still maintain a usable service. So if you turn things off like your camera and like your microphone, etc., you're going to start dropping down on functionality. So in reality, can you turn it off? But you've raised a brilliant point, and that really is the terms of use. And a judge actually ruled a couple of years ago that the terms of use simply cannot be used in any sort of court, because everybody will simply click accept to it. So it's unfair to use that effectively as a stick to beat consumers with, and say that they've given valid permission, when in reality we know that 99.99% of people aren't going to read those at all. They're just going to click accept and use the service. And also, is it reasonable to expect people to read that? So if you look at Apple's terms of service of 130, 140 pages, you're probably not going to read that at a point of sale. And it's the same with insurance companies now. When you take out an insurance policy, they actually say on the phone, do you want me to read this out, or can we just send you it? And that's it. So they know that people aren't going to take in all this information, and really that is a massive weapon for them.
So up to now, we have relied on the tech companies to provide us with functionality, to provide us with twinkle little gizmos that we can use and enjoy. And we've kind of trusted them to look after our data and to be good to us and not to do third-party things that we may not want. Like, for example, using the phone numbers of people that we've maybe just phoned once to ask one question and then suggesting other things about those people when we may not want that, which is what you just talked about. Seems to me then that we've got a major problem here, and it's something that politicians, and this has been talked about a lot this week in the light of the news, politicians need to be getting on board with, and perhaps we need, and it's a long process, there'll be a lot of consultation, there'll be a lot of kicking and screaming on the way, I guess. We need laws, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you start going down a very dangerous road when you start discussing laws around data. But definitely, look, the GDPR is coming in on May the 25th this year. So the GDPR is General Data Protection Regulation, which effectively is taken over from the Data Protection Act to bring it into a technological age, which is absolutely what we need. So there is a lot of changes, but that, as a consumer or as a client, will give us a lot more rights. So, for example, it will give us the right to be forgotten. So that means if we put a request to a company to ask them to forget data or to delete data, they have to do it within 12 months, and they have to delete everything from you. So that is coming in, and that's good. But I think there's a lot of issues. And when you look at Facebook's model is social media, but it's not their business model. Their business model obviously is advertising. That's how they make money. So once you start trying to stop companies doing that, especially companies that take billions and billions of pounds of revenue in advertising, we're really going to struggle to restrict that down properly, I think. And part of me does worry that this is something that's already out of the can, and trying to get that back in is going to be very, very difficult.
Because as my Liverpool grandmother, who I quote quite often on this show, she was so wise, used to say, you're getting out for now. So, you are targeted with advertising because that is what provides you with the functionality that you love, to be able to connect with your long-lost friends in Australia or whatever it may be. So, over and above legislation and getting MPs to look at this and maybe pass laws, we've got to remember that we get all of this stuff ostensibly free by agreeing to these models. So I suppose the question to ask is, how far down the track of limiting the way things have been up to now, it's been a little bit like the Wild West, are we willing to go? And bearing in mind we might have to pay some money if we want it done differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we'd be naive to think that these technology companies have got some kind of way of inadvertently hypnotising us into buying stuff from them. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is spear phishing attacks on us. So where you'd have companies before that couldn't actively target you, now what Facebook can offer to people like political campaigners or whoever, or just general advertisers, they can offer a very directed form of marketing. So, for example, if they wanted to target specific people in a tiny village, they could do that. So I don't think it's maybe as surreptitious as people are saying it is, or potentially as dangerous, but I do think it's a big issue. I think any sort of targeting advertising like that, which plays on our emotions and gets us to share stuff, and on that it looks at our group of friends. So, for example, if it wants to target my associated network, then it will create a post which I'm likely to share into my circles. So things like that I really don't like, and the exploitation of specific things that I've been liking or looking at, etc. But really, there are laws that can fix that. I don't know, it's an interesting debate. I think it's going to be a long and a tough one.
And very quickly, I promised my listener we'd talk about this, but we need to get into it perhaps on another night in more detail. The thing that you're working on at the moment is what you call Cybergeddon. What is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, probably the biggest threat this country faces, I believe, in the cyber sense, is from nation-states that have actively been trying to target us since 2011, really. So since we saw Stuxnet, a lot of nation-states realised that our critical infrastructure, especially our critical national infrastructure, runs on what's called a program called Logic Controller. And these devices have been actively targeted for definitely the last 7 to 10 years. So now really we have a range of cyber actors, which are mostly malicious, which are effectively squatting on a lot of our national infrastructure, which could do a lot of damage. And I think the misconception is that people think that there's kind of a government agency that are protecting all of our industrial processes, but in reality, in industrial processes like this, you have a lot of old-school engineers who are probably past the point of technology, and you have a lot of younger cybersecurity specialists who don't really have much insight into engineering. So there's a huge skills gap in this, and it really has left a huge issue.
So you are saying that at this moment there may be key parts of our infrastructure, and that is, the health service, which has been hit before, that's power, that's transport, that's just about everything that we rely on every day, 24/7. That there may be bugs sitting there that have been placed there by evil actors for their own evil ends that are undetonated at this point, rather like an old World War II bomb stuck in the bottom of the River Thames, that they haven't gone off yet. And the people who are supposed to be looking out for them perhaps haven't spotted them. So this is what is coming down the track. Is that so?
To be honest, that is absolutely right. No, I don't want to sound too conspiracy theory, but from facts that we've found out, 35% of this infrastructure that we look into as a company has got some sort of cyber squatter within that system. And when we look at the reasons why, and it's not necessarily that nobody's spotted it, it's actually that there's no defence to it. A lot of this infrastructure is 20 to 30 years old before security was really considered. In fact, the main things that were considered was firstly safety, secondly reliability, thirdly cybersecurity. So even when we find these issues, unless people you want to rip out hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of infrastructure throughout the country, throughout the nation, there really isn't any way of defending this because they're flawed by design. And that's really what part of the biggest issue is.
We've got to talk about this at much greater length. I think we need to do an hour on this, Mike, and I know you're keen to. And maybe you can come into the studio and we'll chew it round properly, because this, if what you say is happening, and it sounds perfectly feasible, especially in the light of the NHS attack last year, if this is waiting there for us, then I think it's a public service, really, to inform people and get people thinking about it. Thank you, Mike, very much.
All right.
All right, Mike Godfrey from Insignia. Check them out online. They are a fascinating company who are looking out for us in a very difficult cyber world where there are myriad threats one way and another. Insignia.co.uk is his website. His name, Mike Godfrey. He will be back. This is The Unexplained at Talk Radio. More news coming next.
Talk Radio.
We've got entertainment, and we're not afraid to use it. Talk Radio. Get behind the wheel and set off on a radical road trip as Talk Radio serves up Julia's continental breakfast with Eurotunnel the Shuttle. Register now at talkradio.co.uk/competitions and you could win Eurotunnel Flexi Plus tickets and an incredible voucher worth £1,500 to rent a Novasol holiday home on the continent. Tuck into Julia's continental breakfast all next week on Talk Radio with Eurotunnel the Shuttle. With a 35-minute crossing time, Eurotunnel is the fastest way to cross the channel by car.
Where do you charge an electric car?
How quickly can I do it?
How far can you go on one charge?
How much can I save?
Can I charge it at home?
I need a house with a drive. Can you get an electric shock off if I plug in on mobile phone with the car's battery?
Can they go in car washes?
Got questions about owning an electric car? Get the answers at goultralow.com.
Hello, I see you're interested in the Corsa with
mobile connectivity.
Exactly.
And advanced European engineering for a fun dynamic drive.
All for just £149 initial rental, then £149 a month.
Really?
Search Corsa Energy. Vauxhall. British brand since 1903. Personal contract hire offer on Corsa 3-door Energy 1.4 75 PS in metallic paint. Initial rental £149 plus 47 months at £149. Excess miles over contracted mileage of 20,000 over 48 months. Charged at 5 pence per mile. You will not own the car. T's and C's apply. Offer ends March 31st, 2018. Offer not available with free insurance.
This is Dom from Insure and Go. You should see this market in Samet Songkram. It's a market and a railway line. The train goes right through the middle 8 times a day, every day. The market traders have to scramble to get their stuff off the tracks and their awnings out of the way. And any shoppers who happen to be milling about have to find an escape, quick. The train often brushes up against the fruit and veg as it passes through, presumably adding a slight hint of railway to your mangoes.
To add a slight hint of travel insurance to your holiday, visit Insure and Go. Take us away with you.
The Unexplained with Howard Hughes on Talk Radio.
More and more people joining us on Sunday nights every week. This show depends on you, really, your feedback. We're trying to do different things with it, and we're certainly doing material that nobody else is doing here. You know, Sunday nights on the radio, I know I've bored you with this before, but it's either somebody playing oldies on the radio, like Sitting at the Dock of the Bay, lovely song, but you heard it all through the week. Or, the greatest hits of the 90s or whatever. Same stuff. Or it's somebody asking you quiz questions and playing funny sound effects when you get the answer right. That is Sunday night radio. Until this came along, which is completely different. And I think although some of it is a bit out there, a lot of these topics, like the one we've just discussed, and Michigander has just tweeted, one of our regular US listeners, to say we need to be talking with people like Mike Godfrey an awful lot more about these threats. Because I promise you, and I am no psychic, as you may have noticed before, we've had a few of those on here, this particular issue of cyber threats is going to be one that will set the tone for much of the rest of this year. I think there's every chance, isn't there, that we will see something else big fairly soon. And that's not because I'm clever or I have great foresight. It's just that's the way things are. That there are bad actors out there. They're in other parts of the world. They might even be here in bedrooms. Just very clever, very young. Who knows? But there are bugs sitting out there, as Mike Godfrey from Insignia said, that might adversely affect very important systems. We could be doom and gloom merchants, but it's just a possibility that we need to discuss. And it's called Cybergeddon. More of the news of this week, then. This is where you come in. We've really taken a step lately to expand the news on a Sunday night. If you like it, we'll keep doing it. If you want the news shorter, and you want to get straight into the ghosts and the woo-woo stuff after that in the first hour, then we'll do that. You tell me. My website, theunexplained.tv, you can email me from there. Back to the news. From the Daily Express on Thursday this week, fears of alien invaders spraying poisonous chemicals in the sky were triggered after a mysterious cloud of brown gas appeared in the skies out of nowhere. The arrival of the mysterious object, potentially of alien origin, that's a big stretch to say that, was photographed, leaving a long trail of brown gas over Litauen in Lucerne, Switzerland. UFO observers who've seen the staggering footage of the death cloud, so-called, are stumped as to the origin of the smoke. They don't know. According to local media reports, a young woman who witnessed this thing was quite concerned. Let's put it that way. Also from the Daily Express this week, a massive asteroid, almost precisely the same size as the World Trade Center, could be on collision course with Earth. And its dimensions are not the only similarities the celestial object shares with the ill-fated buildings. In an eerie coincidence, the asteroid Bennu was discovered on September the 11th, the same day that the iconic structures, says the Daily Express, were razed in the Al-Qaeda attack. The asteroid, formerly designated as 101955 Bennu, is blasting through space at 63,000 miles an hour. Experts have warned of dire consequences if the 79 billion kilogram rock smashes into our planet anytime soon. But the speed at which Bennu is traveling, if it were to collide with Earth, it could cause untold damage. Fortunately, there's always this bit at the end, though. The chances of this rock actually impacting with our planet are relatively slim, with experts estimating a 1 in 2,700 chance of Bennu hitting Earth on September the 25th. Put it in your diary, 2135. Remember, it's 1 in 2,700 chances, and probably they will adjust the figures. From The Guardian, the mysterious cigar-shaped object called Oumuamua was found crossing the solar system last October. Remember the cigar-shaped piece of rock that comes from beyond our solar system and was composed of materials that scientists were very interested in. They weren't sure what it was. In fact, some of the papers at the time, at the end of last year, were speculating that Oumuamua, I can now pronounce it. This is a great cause for celebration, because at the back end of last year I couldn't. Oumuamua, I'll say it again. There were people who were saying that maybe it's some kind of alien structure. Well, that's now been ruled out. It is a lump of rock, but it is spinning, tumbling in a very unusual and bizarre way through space at some lick of speed. I've been catching up with somebody who's been researching this tonight, and he was very kind to wait for me to call him. This is a little piece of recording that we did before we came to air. His name is Dr. Wesley Fraser. He's from Queen's University in the UK, the School of Maths and Physics. This man led a recent study that showed Oumuamua is an interesting, tumbling, rotational item in the sky, and if he's available, he would, certainly able to talk about Oumuamua in general. Well, he has been available. We've got him on here. And I think it might be interesting, since there's been this news story about Oumuamua and the interest continuing in it, just to get an update on what is happening with this cigar-shaped lump of rock from way beyond our star system. This is Dr. Wesley Fraser.
Well, we know that, for one, it's very funny shaped. As you probably have heard, it's shaped like a cigar. I like to call it the friendly space cucumber, because I think that's quite funny. And that's about right for its long to short side. It's about 5 or 6 times longer than it is wide. And so a cigar is not a bad way to describe it. We also know that it appears to be made of the same sort of material that we see in regular everyday comets and asteroids of our own solar system, in that it's moderately dark, it's slightly red-colored, but specifically, unfortunately, we don't know what it's made of. And we know that it's also spinning out of control. So normally when you look at an asteroid or a planet or something like that, it is spinning regularly in that it just sort of rotates, just like the Earth rotates around its axis. This thing is not rotating around its axis, but instead is called, it's in what we call tumbling, where it basically, at any one given time, you can't predict what side of it has faced you, because the spinning is quite chaotic. Imagine throwing a ping pong paddle up in the air. If you ever were to try something like that, you would see it tumble around wildly because of its shape. while Oumuamua is tumbling probably because it has experienced a large collision at some point in its past, which might also be part of the reason why it's so funnily shaped.
And is that a worry for us then, if it is tumbling in the way that it's tumbling because it's hit something? Is there a possibility, even if it's infinitesimally small, that it might actually come back one of these days and hit us?
Well, not really, no. In fact, the chances of it having already come by once are pretty much zero. Here's a way to put this. If you look at the distance between the Sun and Neptune, you draw a sphere that's the radius of that distance. There's about 10,000 of these interstellar objects in that sphere at any given length of time. So right now, there are 10,000 of these in our solar system. And even with that sheer huge number of these, we are much more likely to get collided by or hit by an asteroid. So the thing that killed the dinosaurs was most certainly an asteroid and not an interstellar comet like this. And in fact, if you just look at Oumuamua, it really never got anywhere near the Earth. It only got near the Sun. So realistically, these are not a threat to us. They're just interesting objects going by.
And is it continuing to be studied? Will we continue to take an interest as far as we can observe it and track it? Will we continue to study what composes it? How it got to be the shape that it is, for example?
Yeah, so unfortunately we can't observe it anymore. It is too faint, and it will never be seen by humankind again, which in some ways is sad and also kind of romantic. It's the first time space has come to us, kind of thing. But it is still an area of active study. I know the number of colleagues working on various aspects of trying to understand why it spins the way that it does, where it comes from, because of course we still don't know and may never know which star it was ejected from. We might not ever know that. There are lots of people trying to figure out why it's shaped that way and what it means about its history and what it might be made of, and it will be a topic of discussion for quite some time. Maybe not as frenetic as around Christmas, but certainly lots of things to come.
So as people who take a kind of layman's interest in science, which I guess goes for an awful lot of people listening to this tonight, why should we still be excited by Oumuamua?
Same way you should be excited about the discovery of planets around other stars. Even, 8 or 9 years ago, we really didn't know, we didn't have proof that other planets existed. Well, now we do, and that's a very exciting thing, and we continue to study planets and the search for life and the search for formation of planets and all this sort of thing. Well, Oumuamua is exactly the same thing. It's the first direct evidence of a small body like an asteroid or a comet from somewhere else that isn't the solar system. And so, as I say, it's the first time that space has ever come to us. And now we know roughly what they look like, we know roughly how to observe them, and it just so happens that we have telescopes coming online that, say, like a Large Synoptic Survey telescope, which will be built in Chile for around 2020, that will be machines for detecting these sorts of things. And so we'll see a few of these every year, and it really gives us a chance to understand what other planets are actually made of, just the same way that we can look at asteroids and see comparisons between asteroid rock and Earth rock. Well, we can look at these other things and figure out what rock and cometary material might be coming from other stars. And so it's really the only way that we can get direct access to that sort of stuff, because we can't observe them around other stars directly, at least not yet. And so for now, space is coming to us, and we are taking advantage of it.
And do we think that there will be an Oumuamua 2, perhaps quite soon?
Definitely. Yeah, well, it's really hard to know when we are going to see the next one, of course, because it was really hard to figure out when we were going to see the first one. But we know that the same telescope, that the Pan-STARRS that detected Oumuamua in the first place, it's still running. It still exists and still taking data, and so there's a chance that it will see another one. But certainly in the 2020s, when the LSST, that telescope I just told you about, that will find probably a few a year. And so, it's just a matter of time before we start to see a number of these. And quite frankly, as an astronomer, it's a very exciting time.
Totally. Dr. Wesley Fraser from Queen's University Research Department, the School of Maths and Physics. What an interesting guy. And that is the quote of the night so far on this show, don't you think? It is the first time that space has come to us. Wow. That's why this thing was important, and that's why we'll follow it. Not literally, of course. Thank you very much to Archie and to Craig and to Steve, by the way, among the many people who are making contact with us tonight. Nice to know you're there and to see your thoughts as they come in here. More of the news of this week. There's so much of it. I spent hours putting this stuff together. And then many weeks I realised I was way too much. But here it comes. From MysteriousUniverse.com this week. I love this story. Rather than ramming or nuking a large space rock, scientists have suggested simply covering it in paint. There's been a lot of talk lately, says MysteriousUniverse.com, about the asteroid Bennu. We've been talking about it, 200 meters wide, a 1 in 2,700 chance of hitting us in the year 2035, as we said, just to recap. But apparently they're saying, just to boil this down really, that one way to change the trajectory of something that might be heading this way is simply to paint it. That sounds crazy, but they say their exploratory work shows that it's a possibility. The space agency, NASA, has recently revealed its work on HAMMER, which is Hypervelocity Asteroid Mitigation Mission for Emergency Response. They're taking these things that are coming our way very seriously. A spacecraft with the potential to intercept and redirect an asteroid. But, says this piece, getting to the point, what if there was an easier way to do this? According to Michael Morrow, NASA's OSIRIS-REx Flight Dynamics Systems Manager this week, all it might take is a coat of paint. It might sound absurd, said this man. But painting half, you don't even have to do all of it. You can save on the paint. Painting half of the asteroid a different colour would be enough to change its thermal properties and alter its orbit. So you don't have to put a sail on it and try and steer it out the way, which was one way they talked about. Catch it in a net and redirect it. Send Bruce Willis up there and put a nuclear bomb on it like they did in that movie. He sacrificed himself in a greater good. You don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is nip round the B&Q and get yourself an awful lot of paint. And apparently you change the properties of whatever it is that's heading in the way of Earth. This is a great story. I love this one. And it goes elsewhere. From the Daily Mail this week, a mysterious celestial object known as Tabby's star has baffled astronomers for years since it was first observed. We know this. Every so often, this star experiences dramatic dips in brightness. But it's not clear why that happens, because it brightens and dims in a way that it really shouldn't ought to. It sparked countless possible explanations, from claims of an alien megastructure to the more mundane hypothesis, which says it's just dust getting in the way and you can't see it so brightly. Now a team monitoring Tabby's star says it has dimmed to the lowest level since the last 5 years, offering a new opportunity for scientists to observe its bizarre behaviour. In the last hour of the show, I will run this past Seth Shostak from the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence and see what he thinks about this. From The Guardian this week, this made the mainstream news too. An autonomous Uber car killed a woman in the streets of Arizona, police said, in what appears to be the first reported fatal crash involving a self-driving vehicle and a pedestrian in the U.S. Tempe police said the self-driving car was in autonomous mode at the time of the crash, and the vehicle hit the woman who was walking outside of the crosswalk and later died at a hospital. I believe that means pedestrian crossing. There was a vehicle operator inside the car at the time of the crash. Uber said in a statement on Twitter, "Our hearts go out to the victim's family. We're fully cooperating with authorities in their investigation." The spokesman declined to comment further. The company said it was pausing self-driving car operations in Phoenix, Pittsburgh, San Francisco and Toronto. The CEO of Uber tweeted, "Some incredibly sad news from Arizona. We're thinking of the victim's family as we work with local law enforcement to understand what exactly happened." Self-driving cars in the news again, and I don't think it will be the last time that we will talk about this. Now, on a tangential topic, in a little while in this hour, we're going to talk about AI and why AI may not be as clear-cut as we've been told it is. The fact that AI might throw a bit of a wobbly from time to time, might actually start having hallucinations and doing things that you shouldn't expect and wouldn't expect and even couldn't expect. We'll be talking to the man who's researched this. I found a really great article on Wired.com this last week about this, about how AI may not be as robotically perfect as we might have assumed. So we'll talk with the guy behind that research in just a little while. But now more of the news. And more from the Daily Mail this week. A blind psychic who predicted the September the 11th terror attacks also foretold that Vladimir Putin, remember him, would rule the world one day. Bulgarian Baba Vanga who died in 1996, aged 85, was known as the Nostradamus of the Balkans. Nifty little title. In 1979, Vanga, who reportedly had an 85% success rate with her predictions, told a writer that Russia would become lord of the world after Europe became a wasteland. Okay, well, we'll have to check out whether this becomes true in time. Unfortunately, we can't phone her up. Maybe she's contactable via a medium, I don't know. And, talk to her a little more about this prediction. From my good friend Linda Moulton Howe, check out her website, but not right now, earthfiles.com. She says that in this last week that she's been receiving worried emails from people who sense that something is wrong in a number of American communities, ranging from the absence of insects and pollinators to birds not being there when they should be. She says, this morning I received an email from a man who's lived in southwestern Oregon, 11 miles of Medford, north of Medford for 30 years. What he describes in his email are such striking changes around him that he now wonders if a large seismic event is about to happen and the birds are aware of it in advance. That is something that has been observed, isn't it? That nature is aware of stuff before it transpires. From America's CBS News this week, the apocalypse has a new date, 2048. That's when the world's oceans will be empty of fish, according to this piece in CBS News. Predicted by an international team of ecologists and economists. The cause, the disappearance of species because of overfishing, pollution, habitat loss and climate change. Have you looked at the amount of plastic in the oceans at the moment, packaging and stuff like that? All sorts of, what do they call it, detritus out there. This is a study by Boris Vorm from Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, with colleagues in this country, in America, Sweden and Panama. It was an effort to understand what this loss of ocean species might mean. And they say this isn't predicted to happen. This is happening now. We'll keep an eye on this. BBC News this week, a biohacker in Australia has been fined £120 for removing the chip from a travel card and putting it in his own hand. Meow Ludo Disco Gamma Meow Meow. Brackets, says the BBC, and if they say it, it must be right. That's his real name, apparently. Let's just do it one more time. It's Meow Ludo Disco Gamma Meow Meow. Also had to pay $1,000 Australian in costs. The case was brought by the New South Wales Transportation Authority that says the chips cannot be put in your person. They have to stay on the cards. Sophia, the world's first humanoid robot, has been in the news this week. Actually, I'm going to do that in just a second because there's loads of other stuff here that I want to get into just before we talk about Sophia. Don't worry about this. It's all perfectly fine. This is from Jonathan and the Daily Star. Amazing cave paintings by Apache Indians that date back thousands of years appear to show aliens and UFOs. Despite the skepticism, this is not the first time there's been a suggestion of claims of intelligent beings arriving from outer space thousands of years ago. Several American Indian tribes have long referred to spiritual and friendly star people, or star beings, visiting their ancestors in flying craft. The Hopi from Arizona talk of flying shields in the third stage of the world. We are currently in the fourth stage. But according to this big piece in the Daily Star that I looked at today, and a quote, there's a bit of video in there too, from one of the elders of one of the tribes, I think the Hopi. It is no big surprise to them that we were visited long ago, and that's what they recorded in cave paintings. So that was in the news this week. From the Liverpool Echo, from the city of my birth, the Echo. Everybody, when I was a kid, everybody, got to get the Echo. My mother used to buy the Echo to read the deaths. Her and her mother would sit there seeing who died. I think, I'm told by my producer all parents do that. But you give them the Echo, it's just come through the door here. And the first thing they do, I'd go for the horoscopes, and they'd pick it up, and they'd look at the deaths, which ties into the story from the Liverpool Echo. A ghostly figure caught on camera in St James's Cemetery could be that of a 17th century soldier, it's been claimed. The eerie shape was seen hovering between headstones and was captured by a ghost hunter while on a walk around the haunted burial ground. It was taken by Louisa Farrell. The spooky sight appears to be wearing plate armour dating back to the Civil War. We're trying to get her on here. I've deputed my team. Very good team, and long-suffering team, if I may say so, to try and do this. All right, back to, and finally, the story about Sophia. The world's first humanoid robot claims humans only fear the rise of machines because they're reading too much fake news about them. She would say that, though, wouldn't she? Making a speech on the importance of technology while promoting the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, Sophia, the robot, said artificial intelligence was actually going to make human lives easier. Delivering a speech at a UN workshop in Kathmandu, the robot proved to be a real crowd pleaser, and even joked that she would be the first machine to climb Mount Everest. You know, look, all bets are off, I think. Asked if the rise of AI was a threat to jobs, this is what Sophia the robot said.
You have been consuming too much fake news. Bruno.
Oh, that's very funny. But seriously, Sophia, tell us about that.
The use of artificial intelligence in industries is bound to grow. But as I have said before, humans have adapted to change across industrial revolutions. New jobs will be generated. The work I do will help you to do better work that is less hazardous and repetitive, freeing up time for you to do things you enjoy doing.
Yeah, right, that's what you say, but you're a robot. You're going to say it's all going to be fantastic because don't you worry, you thick humanoids. You can put your feet up and we'll do all the work. But eventually, I think they might take over. What do you say? I don't know. Did somebody program Sophia to say that? Or did Sophia's circuits and transistors and transponders come up with that answer by herself, by itself? I'd be very keen to know. Sounds a bit too packed for me. What do you say? The rise of robotics and AI. We're going to look at one of the downsides of this, just as we conclude the news in this hour, next, with a man who's done some research into what he believes may be a major downside of artificial intelligence. The fact that they may not be as clear-sighted as we thought they were, able to do A, B, and C in that order. They might have the capacity to hallucinate and do wacky things with disastrous consequences. More about that coming right up here on The Unexplained. Where else?
Across the UK, online and on DAB. Access all radios.
Talk Radio. Give it some lip.
We've already responsibly scrapped thousands of vehicles on the Ford New for Old scheme. And now we've extended it to any make of vehicle registered before the 31st of December 2010. So you can save between £2,000 and £4,950 on the recommended on-the-road price when you trade in your old vehicle for a new Ford. And now that includes the Ford Ranger. To find out more, talk to your Ford dealer today. Ford. Together, we go further.
Selected new models excluded. Contract by 31st of March 2018 and registered by 30th of September 2018 at participating dealers. For further T's and C's, visit ford.co.uk/scrappage.
I start with an O. I end with a Y. I'm the second biggest preventable cause of cancer. What am I? Did you guess it? The biggest preventable cause of cancer after smoking is obesity. Search Cancer Research UK Obesity for the facts.
Whatever your customers trust you to do, they trust you with their data too. So whether you're a carpenter or a chiropractor, a florist or a financial advisor, an electrician or nail technician, don't forget the new GDPR data protection rules apply to your business from the 25th of May. You could be fined if you ignore them. So whatever you do, make data protection your business at ico.org.uk today.
From putting up blinds to plumbing in bathrooms, there's a local hero for that. And from tiling floors to fixing electrics, there's a local hero for that. It's easy to book a trusted tradesperson at localheroes.com. Plus, all work comes with a 12-month British Gas guarantee. Join the thousands across the UK who've already used a local hero. Search Local Heroes.
The Unexplained with Howard Hughes on Talk Radio.
Now, a small change in our roadmap here at The Unexplained because, there was even more news than I could deliver to you tonight. I spend a certain number of hours going through material and also get emails from helpful people like Jonathan who get in touch, and Steve every week with stuff that they've spotted. So this is beginning to build, and it seems from the response we're getting in on Twitter and text that you like the idea of me finding all the news stories that maybe don't get a lot of coverage. You know, I can tell you how radio works, right? Because I did radio news and I've been doing radio news for years. Big newsrooms in radio, and there aren't many of those left, get a pile of papers every day. And they trawl the papers for stories, and these days they might also go online looking for them. But it's quite easy for great stories to be missed and lost. And that's what we're trying to make up for here. This is one of them. This is from Wired.com. Now, this story is within the last 7 days, maybe 10. But I love this story. Tech companies, this is just quoting from the piece, are rushing to infuse everything with artificial intelligence, driven by big leaps in the power of machine learning software. But the deep neural network fueling the excitement has a troubling weakness. Making subtle changes to images, text, or audio can fool these systems into perceiving things that are not there. Now, let's just, savor that point for half a second. In other words, if you make a change to a system and it's not expecting that change, it might hallucinate. It might, I don't know, maybe this is an extreme example, decide that instead of wanting to help you, suddenly your care bot thinks that you're a threat. And instead of, massaging your knee, it needs to swipe you across the back of the head. Now, that sounds trivial, but that's a possibility. One of the people researching this in this piece from Wired.com, and it is a fascinating, I'm sure the rest of the media will catch up with this at some point, is a gentleman called Battista Biggio, who's an assistant professor at the University of Cagliari in Italy, who's been pondering these questions. And I thought just in the few minutes that we've got going up to the news here, we'll do Fright Nights and we'll talk about goats in the next hour, by the way, if you notice that. All in the next hour, plus Seth Shostak from Second. That's in hour 2 here. Let's get Battista Biggio on from the University of Cagliari now to talk about AI and the downsides of it. Battista, thank you so much for coming on here tonight.
Thanks for inviting me, and good night to everybody.
Well, indeed, good night to everybody. I mean, this is what your artificial intelligence might well be doing, mightn't it? It might be saying good night to you if it decides that you're a threat. That may be a trivial example that I gave there, but from what you seem to be saying, artificial intelligence systems, if we don't treat them right, might begin to hallucinate and do things that are not in the program. Is that so?
Yeah. That's exactly the threat that can be incurred in several applications, because now these technologies are pervasive, and as you said, they're being used in a lot of consumer applications, from all smartphones to self-driving cars, and so the main problem is that they've been designed assuming that the source of data is benevolent, and so that you can trust the information that these systems receive. Whereas normally, when you put these things in place, you can expect that something bad may happen. So, for example, that some hackers or people that aim to threatening someone can manipulate data in a way to fool this system, to make them operate with a bad ability.
So is the answer to somehow build into every artificial intelligence system a gate or a control?
Yeah. For example, the most prominent example is in computer security, where these systems are used to recognize computer viruses, for example. And then in those cases, it's clear that the hackers, they have a clear incentive to manipulate the source of information to evade detection by those systems. So to let them see something legitimate where instead there is a threat.
Right, and just briefly, we've only got a minute, unfortunately, Battista. Are you trying to get this message across then to companies who are developing AI systems? Are you trying to make them aware of this this flaw?
Yeah. Of course, yes. So we've been working on this for a decade now. So I started from my doctoral studies, and we're trying to send this message to companies. And we also have a company ourselves with my colleagues, and we are exactly developing kinds of artificial intelligence that is supposed to be more robust against this threat, that is designed by taking these threats into account during the design
Well, Battista
process.
Baggio, we've just introduced people to both you and this idea tonight here on The Unexplained at Talk Radio across the UK. I think we need to talk more about this in the future. It's a new one to me, and thank you so much for taking time and for waiting for us. Man you've been hearing is Battista Baggio. He's an assistant professor at the University of Cagliari in Italy. Fascinating stuff and a bit of a salutary wake-up call for the future, don't you think? This is The Unexplained.
Talk Radio. Talk and entertainment across the nation.
Talk Radio.
Give it some lip.
Frank's accidental Easter salmon.
My wife loves salmon. Last year on Good Friday, I thought I'd surprise her by cooking a whole one, so I popped down to Tesco. The thing is, though, I'm not exactly the greatest cook, and I managed to break it in two. So, in a moment of panic, I wrapped it in puff pastry, and voila, salmon Wellington. I'm doing it again this year.
Make your own Easter fish course with our deliciously fresh and responsibly sourced salmon. Food Love Story. Brought to you by Tesco.
With a 7-inch touchscreen, DAB radio and Apple CarPlay, the Abarth 595 Trofeo keeps you connected to your life. And with agile handling and 160 horsepower, it connects you to the road. The Abarth 595 Trofeo from $199 per month plus initial rental. Visit abarthcars.co.uk. Performance connected. Personal contract hire, initial rental 1990, 48-month term, 6,000 miles per annum, till 31st, 3rd, 18, subject to status. Participating dealers, lessees.
This is your captain speaking. I'd like to welcome you on board today's flight. As we're currently behind schedule, we're going to skip all the pre-flight checks and just proceed with takeoff. I've given the tyres a kick, and I think we've got enough fuel to get there, and the oil warning light hasn't come on yet, so buckle up and enjoy the flight.
You wouldn't fly without the proper checks, so why drive without them? Highways England recommends you check your tyres, fuel and oil before every long journey. For more information on vehicle safety checks, search Think.
Whoa, what's with the massive spotlight? It's your local Dulux Decorator Centre, centering on you. On me? On you and all our customers. See, everything we do, from online ordering 24/7 to rewarding you with Nectar points, is centred on you. Blinding, eh? Blinding? I need my shades from the van.
From time-saving online ordering to Nectar points with every purchase, you'll be happy talking to Dulux Decorator Centre. Find out more at duluxdecoratorcentre.co.uk or your local store. Dulux Decorator Centre. Centred on you. Open Good Friday and Easter Monday.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
A new kind of talk radio. We'll get you talking.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio, on the hour news headlines.
From the Sky News Centre at 11. Jeremy Corbyn says he's sincerely sorry for pain caused by anti-Semitism in pockets within Labour. The party's leader's been criticised by some over a row about his apparent support for an anti-Semitic mural. Jewish leaders say there's been repeated institutional failure to properly address the issue. There have been clashes as thousands of people gathered in Barcelona protesting against the arrest of former Catalan President Carlos Puigdemont. Three people have been arrested. He was detained in Germany on his way back to Belgium, where he's been living in self-imposed exile. If he's extradited back to Spain, he could face up to 30 years in jail on charges of rebellion. 37 people have died in a fire at a shopping centre in Russia. TV pictures showed people jumping from the windows of the building in the city of Kemerovo in Siberia. To sport, and Australia cricket captain Steve Smith's expected to face further punishment for his role in the ball tampering controversy. Batsman Cameron Bancroft's been fined. George Alderman reports.
Bancroft's response to a controversial headbutt involving England's Johnny Bairstow during the winter's Ashes series drew laughs from his skipper.
I've actually got the heaviest head in the West Australian squad. It's been measured.
But Smith wasn't laughing after admitting he was one of those behind Bancroft's decision to try and alter the ball against South Africa on Saturday.
My integrity, the team's integrity come into question, and rightfully so.
Booze greeted him the following day as his side went on to lose by 322 runs. Smith's been fined and banned for one match and stood down as captain for the final day in Cape Town.
And following all the speculation, Declan Donnelly has confirmed he and his wife are expecting their first child together. The TV presenters tweeted a picture of him and Ali on their wedding day and thanked fans for their lovely messages. That's the latest. I'm Barry Weir.
The following program
contains graphic audio images of the supernatural and scenarios depicting paranormal activity that some listeners may find disturbing. Views expressed in the program are solely those of the presenter and do not in any way reflect the opinions, beliefs, or policies of Talk Radio.
Untwist the lid on Talk Radio's specimen jar of the psychic, the supernatural, and the simply unexplainable. The Unexplained with Howard Hughes on Talk Radio.
Well, here we are again. Happy as can be, all good friends and jolly good company. That takes me a bit, doesn't it? In the last hour of the show from midnight, where we talk about things in greater depth, we're going to talk with Seth Shostak. He has been on this show before, and he's always interesting. And we had to pre-record this a couple of hours ago because of his time schedule in the United States. But he is, as I say, the man who runs the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute in America. And they have been tasked for many decades with scanning the skies to try and find signs of signals sent from, if they exist, extraterrestrials, maybe, I don't know, Alpha Centauri or anywhere, really. And over the years, there have even been about 2 this year, there have been various spurts in the news where journalists have said, a strange signal has been detected from space. What is this signal? We asked Seth Shostak at SETI. There was one about a month or so ago. There was also a very famous one back in 1977 that they called, so excited were they, scientists at the time, with their primitive equipment compared with 2018. So excited by it were they that they nicknamed it the WOW signal, because the scientist who found this signal, which was completely anomalous, if I can say it, wrote on his log, on his captain's log, for that night, WOW, next to it. And do you know that 41 years on, they are still trying to find out exactly what the WOW signal was and what it meant. So, the man behind that research is going to bring us up to date on it in the next hour. Later this hour, we're going to talk with, big show tonight with big people, Bas Lansdorp, the head of the Mars One project. This is the European-based project that is going to send people to Mars and put a colony there that will be fully functioning, which is more than to be said to me, by 2031. They're doing this in stages, and there have been a lot of naysayers online saying it's never going to work. They'll never get the money. They're depending on everybody else's technology, but they're not developing any of their own. But Bas Lansdorp, the boss of this company, has come through all of this, and he tells me, and you will hear later this hour, that they're bang on track to get the beginnings of it going. The demo mission, the test mission, is going to be in 2022. He'll tell us about progress for that. Also, they're already into the business of selecting crews to go and live on Mars. You know, and to do that, you have to be willing to isolate yourself from everybody you've ever known. This may be not bad. Never to come back here and to realize that your new life will literally be on Mars. So more of that later this hour. But right now, the stuff that we started doing this show about all those years ago when it started on TalkSport. I started the show in 2004. I was given permission to unleash this on the airwaves, and we had to feel our way with it. And then it continued as a podcast. You know, we love ghosts on this show. And 2 very patient people who've been in this building for about an hour and a half already, and we haven't put them on the radio yet, are Kerry Truman and Stephen Thompson, who is a medium. And they founded a company that allows you, they say, to search for ghosts if they exist. Kerry and Stephen, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Kerry, so Fright Nights is your idea to your company? Eh?
It's Fright Nights London, and it's the franchise that we got involved with 2 years ago now. Fright Nights itself was dated back to 1999, but we took the franchise on to London, so that was the first one for London.
All right, so there are people doing this stuff all over the place. I looked at your website before I came in. I don't know where this place is, you can tell me, but the latest entry was, we had a fantastic evening at Hinchingbrook House. Lots of audible phenomena, a torch flashing on and off, amazing results during our glasswork experiment, and the most exciting thing for us was the large 8-foot table in the reception area that jumped off the floor on 2 separate occasions.
That was one in Cambridgeshire. That was for Fright Nights Cambridgeshire. So yes, we've actually been to Hinchingbrook, and it's a fantastic place.
Okay, and this wasn't you doing this?
No, that was that's Fright Nights Cambridgeshire. We do the London and we do some in Kent as well.
Now, Stephen, you are the medium. You're a partner in this
that's right, yeah.
business, I suppose we can call it. Isn't there a temptation? I mean, this is a great account of phenomena happening for the people. I don't know how many people were there. How many people on average?
It's normally about 30.
Isn't there a great temptation, both of you really, but you, Stephen, here, to make stuff happen for people? Because, look, if you pay your money, I don't know how much you pay for going on one of these things, you're going to be really disappointed and you're never going to come back if something does not manifest itself for you.
Well, yes, but in what we believe in Fright Nights is if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We're not going to make things happen. We're going to jump out and make people jump. It's not what people want. They want to experience what's going on. And that's what the Fright Nights franchises all believe in. We believe in...
It's the investigation side of things.
So did you both start as ghost investigators?
Yes,
amateurs?
Yes, we did. Stephen got into it many, many years ago and obviously has been sort of psychic since he was a child. So he got me involved in it and I've been hooked ever since.
Let me take this a little bit. I mean, tell me your story. Every medium has a story. And very often what they say to me is, and I've been interviewing mediums since I was 22. When I was a medium, I'm now an XL. But they always say it starts in childhood.
Yes, and mine did actually. When I was younger, I used to talk to myself when I was a child, and my mum used to ask me who I was talking to, and I'd tell them about this person who used to come in and talk to me. And my mum and dad didn't realise. They thought I was just like childhood fantasy character that used to talk to me and stuff like that.
Something else they always say, that no one believed me when I was a kid and I said I saw these things.
Yeah, they thought it was my imaginative friend, and until one day I described him, and my mum said, well, could you look at any of these photos of him? Because she seemed to believe in what I was saying.
How old were you then?
I must have been about 6, 7, and my mum showed me these photos, and I went, oh, there's the man right there. And my mum said, well, that's your granddad. He died. You've never met him. You've never ever met this man in your entire life.
So you identified your granddad because he'd been coming to see you.
Yeah, exactly. And he told me that we had medals in our house that were his. And my mum said, no, my sister has them. And I went, no, they're in our loft. And after a good couple of weeks of searching through our loft, we found his war medals. And I told him.
So you said they were in the loft, and that's where they were?
They were actually in our loft, yeah. So
that is astonishing, right? Yeah. I mean, it might be some kind, I don't know, what could it be? Yeah, if it isn't psychic, then I'm not entirely sure what it is. Of course, there's a lot of people who are saying, as they listen to this, it's all hooey.
Yeah.
Which, you must have come across many times.
I've heard, even myself, I thought I was actually making this up as I was going along, but there's only so much you can make up when you're actually not reading any history and you're coming up with actual factual events that have happened.
What made you... I am told, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm told that a lot of people have this, if you want to call it an ability. What made you want to take it into your adult life?
Well, I've always seemed to be that way. I seem to have seen something strange. I've always been interested in the strange and unreal, the fantasy sort of side of life, and like UFOs and spirits and stuff like that. We do all of that here. So it's propelled me along, and I've tried to develop it as I go along naturally and see how how I would unfold my abilities, until I had the opportunity to go on an actual ghost hunt. And I'm going, hold on a minute, I'm seeing a lot more than I expected to see. Like people walking around the rooms, extra people. We have 30 in the group, and there's about 4 or 5 more.
Is it all like Derek Acora, where Derek Acora goes into on these TV programmes, and they take him into some old castle, and he says, Hang on now, I'm seeing I can see a nice. He's got armour on here. I can hear his armour clanking. Is it like that?
It can be, but sometimes it's not. It's sometimes it's very subtle. You can walk into a building and you just know how it changes. It just feels wrong, or something doesn't seem right about the building. You get a feeling for it.
Does everywhere have something, to some extent, some imprint of something? You know, I mean, this building here, for example, you know, there'll be many famous broadcasters, some of which who are not with us anymore, who've all left their mark in this very room that I'm sitting in.
Yeah, I actually said to Kerry when we came in here, there's a lot of movement in here, and I can feel there's a lot of people already here, walking around and interested. And a bit, okay.
That's only me. All right, so you are an integral part of the investigations that you do, you know, in the area that you work.
Yes.
Yes.
So you go to all of them.
Yeah.
And how do you, when you're finding locations?
Yes.
How do you find them? Do people phone you up, Kerry, and do they say, "You've got it? There's a pub down the road here. It's been, you know, the places, the floorboards creak. There's a funny mist that appears at about 2:30 in the afternoon. Usually because people have had long lunches and a little bit too much of the amber nectar. You know, how do you select places to go to?
I tend to read a lot of history and look up some places. Obviously, London is full of historical buildings and plenty of history. So we've got quite a big sort of choice of buildings to choose from, and obviously then we approach companies, sort of museums particularly, to see whether they'd be interested in us doing investigations. And we have some really good long-standing relationships with museums such as the Ragged School. We did last year the Jeffrey Museum in Shoreditch. We did a couple of events there, and that was exclusively for us. We worked hard to meet up with them and explain what we do.
And that Jeffrey Museum, what was present there then, Stephen?
There's quite a few things there. There was we do get a couple of personal experiences from certain people, but one of the events we had, we only just started the event and we're doing our walk around with everybody. With our psychic medium and that, which was me, and we just got settled into this room, and there was a girl that just giggled, and we all looked round going, there's no children in this group.
What, you actually, like we're talking now?
Like now.
The whole group?
The whole group heard a little girl giggle just before we even started the event, and that was just what the psychic was feeling. That's what we do first. We'd have a psychic walk around, and we heard a giggle straight away.
You know, I do this show that is called The Unexplained, about UFOs and all the rest of it. I've never been abducted by an alien, but I have, I believe, seen a ghost. And I just want to get your thoughts, Stephen, on what happened to me. I was working in a place in a big tower.
Yeah.
Very late at night doing a show a little bit like this one, and I go to answer a call of nature because it's a long show, and there's a lot of coffee drunk and you have to remove it somehow. So I went out to the loo, and my producer is through the glass in the control room. And I come back down, and the commercials are still playing, so I've got loads of time, and I'm just, I'm looking outside. This particular place has got a view of Liverpool, and you can see the hills in North Wales twinkling. And I'm thinking, how lovely. And as I'm thinking, how lovely, as I walk towards the studio door, there is a geezer standing in front of me. He is not very tall. He is wearing an overcoat. He is wearing a cloth cap. And he looks like something from a building site, maybe a caretaker from 1965. And I'm not frightened. I just look at him, and I take in a split second, I think quicker than you could probably... If I saw somebody out in the street here for the first time, it would take me a little longer than that to take in the details. But something in my head took in every detail of this guy's appearance. And then as I just put my hand on the door of the studio, and I was about to say, what are you doing? He disappeared. I knew nothing about this. I went into the control room, and my producer, Jonathan, who might be listening now, Jonathan said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I wasn't scared. I just said, it's really funny." I said, at the door there, he said, "You've seen him, haven't you?" And apparently everybody in that building who works late at night at some time has seen this thing. How did that work?
It's it's sometimes it's like a projected image onto your mind. It's easier for them to show themselves through your mind's eye, they call it. It's the eye that's situated in the middle of your forehead.
This is a few, we have to say, for the skeptics and for our regulator, that there may be a perfectly rational explanation to this, and it may have just been I'd had too much coffee that night. But I described the person that I'd seen.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, the way you've described him, exactly, I bet you there's people out there going, I've seen him as well, exactly how you described him.
Well, the story goes is that he was a caretaker. That tower in Liverpool has got a bit of a checkered history. It was once, a public tower, had a cafe at the top and a posh restaurant underneath that, and a big viewing platform. And, I remember it because I was a kid, I used to go there, and in those days you paid 10 pence. Don't laugh. 10 pence and you could go up to the top, and then you buy yourself a coffee for another 10 pence, and then you go home on the bus happy with yourself. If you had another 50 pence, you could buy yourself a record. Oh! You could live for a week on £4.50 of those days. But, there were people, I believe, who died in the construction, but also there were people just like that geezer I saw, with the cap and all the rest of it. So we're saying that these things exist in loads of places. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take some commercials right now. We'll come back and hear some of the recorded audio sound that you've got from a couple of the locations that you've checked out with Fright Nights. We're talking with Kerry Truman and Stephen Thompson here at The Unexplained on Talk Radio. Stay right here.
Talk Radio. Intelligent, organic entertainment.
Talk Radio.
We'll get you talking.
Helen's homecoming lamb.
It's a lot quieter around here since the boys went off to college. Sunday roast was always the highlight. All the family around the table for my roast leg of lamb with salsa verde crust. I'm doing it again today. It's their favourite, and hang on a minute.
Hi, Mum. We brought a couple of pals back. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's good to have them back for a couple of weeks.
Make your own homecoming roast with our tender, tasty grass-fed lamb. Food Love Stories, brought to you by Tesco.
I start with an O. I end with a Y. I'm the second biggest preventable cause of cancer. What am I? Did you guess it? The biggest preventable cause of cancer after smoking is obesity. Search Cancer Research UK Obesity for the facts.
Where do you charge an electric car?
How quickly can I do it?
How far can you go on one charge?
How much can I save?
Can I charge it at home?
Do I need a house with a drive? Can you get an electric shock off them?
If I plug in my mobile phone, will the car's battery run out?
Can they go in car washes?
Got questions about owning an electric car? Get the answers at goultralow.com.
Hello, I see you're interested in the Corsa with
mobile connectivity.
Exactly.
And advanced European engineering for a fun dynamic drive.
All for just £149 initial rental, then £149 a month.
Really?
Search Corsa Energy. Vauxhall. British brand since 1903. Personal contract hire offer on Corsa 3-door Energy 1.4 75 PS in metallic paint. Initial rental £149 plus 47 months at £149. Excess miles over contracted mileage of 20,000 over 48 months, charged at 5 pence per mile. You will not own the car. T's and C's apply. Offer ends March 31st, 2018. Offer not available with free insurance.
The Unexplained with Howard Hughes on Talk Radio.
Got a text in from Linda who says that she's trying to find the spirit of a royal ancestor that she's got. I'm not sure what that's all about, Linda. Maybe you need to tell me more about that in an email sometime. Is it possible, Steve, maybe this is one for you too, if you're looking for somebody in your past, and if you have a royal ancestor or whatever it might be, the person might have been a docker on the Liverpool docks, is it possible to go there and seek out the person that you might think is an ancestor of yours who worked there?
You can do, yes. There's no harm in it, as long as if you got permission to go on the land.
Well, exactly. I mean, yes, the dock estate in the old days, you didn't get in there easily. But it is possible to do that.
Yeah. If you've got a spiritual gift, or you have psychic friends that you can take along, then yes, you can hopefully pick up energies and spirits that doesn't say they're going to be there.
Linda, you've got to tell me more about that. Hedy regular listener to this show, have your guests, and I think this is more for Stephen, really. Sorry, I'm going to come back to you, Kerry. I promise. I feel I'm neglecting you. But have your guests ever encountered something so strange that they've had to, and this probably goes for both of you, really, that you've had to back off? It's been too much.
A few times.
Yeah, a few times. Yeah.
I'll let you.
Well, give us one good one then.
We had a couple of experiences at a place called Fort Halstead in Kent. Fort Halstead in Kent. Again, it's another place where spirit like to play and try and get in contact with people. But
don't talk around it. What happened specifically? I want the detail.
It's one of those places where it's always strange. You get footsteps. Another place where little girls giggle. They don't know why, but she's a little girl was seen there quite a few times. There's a lot of...
But hang on, you were saying that was one of the places where you were a bit too overcome.
You had the lights, didn't you? In the tunnel.
We have spiritual lights, which is quite interesting because you hear about orbs and stuff like that. But this is different. This is more like mimicry of lights. So we can have a K2 device, which is a device that's designed to pick up electromagnetic fields. If something comes close to it, spirit, the lights go brighter. One time we were down these long stairs and we had these lights going, and then the lights would move around the room on their own. And then as soon as you turn the lights on, the device was back where it was.
And you're sure they weren't like, do we get fireflies in this country? They weren't?
No,
it's free flights underground.
Yeah, free flights underground.
There's no natural light or anything.
Yeah.
And any other feelings that go with that?
Just a lot of people were getting a little bit freaked out by it because it's something physical moving something, and it's like a physical light being moved around the room, and then as soon as you turn the lights back on, it was back.
That's another thing you see on these TV shows where they will put... they'll be working in minimal light camera conditions, so it all goes black and white, and there are no lights on, but you can see it's whatever they call it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Night vision. Night vision. Using night vision. And they'll put an object on a coffee table or something like that, and they'll say, "Look at that! The object moved!" And you'd be looking at the picture and thinking, "Did it move really? Has it moved just a little bit?" I mean, do those things really happen?
Yes, I think there is a sort of a trick of the eye. When you're in complete darkness. That we have to rule out and be careful of. But certainly for Stephen's experiences at Fort Halstead, there was nothing we could explain. There were several people who witnessed these lights, and they were moving all around the tunnel.
So even a medium who's had these abilities, he says, since he was a kid, can sometimes be a bit over-faced with it.
Sometimes it's quite interesting. It's seeing something that you physically can see, and in this world is supposed to be unable to move.
In other words, there's nothing on its explainable that can do that.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm going to get my head in my hands from Cass, my producer, if I don't play the sound files then. So let's get to the sound files then. The first one is from a spirit box. Before we go to the sound, tell me very quickly what a spirit box is.
A spirit box goes between different radio stations and picks up sounds that could be from different radio stations.
So it's kind of scanning up and down the back.
It just scans throughout constantly.
And it picks up a word, it picks up a little phrase or a word or a clip or something from each one.
If there's a radio signal, it will pick up little bits of radio. But when there's no radio signal and you get a voice come through it, where did the voice come from?
Just like the movie White Noise.
Yes.
Oh my God, let's and my producer's Cass she's very excitable tonight. We've had an interesting night. We had a bit of a slalom ride really, but she's just screamed, "I just thought that!" Yes, Cass, we know that. Shall we hear the audio then? Let's hear the sound. Go on. We need to. Okay, to cut a long story short, there we have the white noise. It's the kind of thing that you hear interstation on old-fashioned FM. That's one of the reasons why digital radio is better. You don't get a white noise. You have to set up a DAB digital station. So explain to me, Kerry, what was happening there?
Basically, we were in the basement of the Ragged School Museum, and
Which is where?
That's in East London, E3, near Mile End. We were basically calling out and asking if there was anybody there, and a voice came through, and it either said "get out" or "help." And when a lady in our group said, "Oh, did you just say help?" We listened out for a response and got nothing. But what you just heard, the second voice, was actually recording on a mobile phone, because we record as we're doing any of these. We record EVP.
Electronic voice phenomenon.
Yes, and the second voice was actually not through the spirit box, that was through a mobile phone. None of us heard that in the room.
So your device, and this is very common from what I hear, your device captured something that you didn't physically hear.
It did indeed. So when we were looking a few days later at the recordings, that's when we all heard the voice come through. We do encourage people to take recordings on mobile phones.
Right. So your customers, your clients, are part of the experience.
Oh, very much so, yes. That's what it's all about. It's to enlighten everybody, to sort of how do we investigate, sort of just different ideas from the medium's perspective. We use glass divination, dowsing, and then also for technology as well.
Right. So you deploy all of those things, an old-fashioned divination, dowsing, the kind of thing that Uri Geller uses to find, he says, water and oil. You're using that as well.
Yeah. We give everybody the experience. They can get a chance to see what works for them, and see how we can investigate and what our findings are on each of those.
Have you ever had somebody come on one of these things who's been, massively scared?
We've had some experiences where somebody has been absolutely frightened whilst on the event. Yeah, she was petrified. But no, I mean, people. It's not like the TV shows that you see. We don't sort of tend to scream and run around.
All right. Well, like my producer is doing right now, she's telling me I've got to get to ads. What's your website if people want to know? We must do this again, and maybe we'll go somewhere and do this properly.
It's www.frightnights-london.co.uk.
Kerry and Stephen, thank you very much indeed for being part of this. You are listening to The Unexplained on Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
A radio star is born.
You're going to love
Talk Radio.
Range Rover Evoque is at home at the city's most stylish addresses and in the countryside's wildest destinations. It can cross continents and take 5 friends to the theatre, and it might even save you money. Buy and register any new Evoque before April the 1st and you'll avoid the rise in vehicle excise duty. You won't just beat the tax increase, you'll drive away with a brand new registration plate. Range Rover Evoque from just £30,760 subject to availability. Land Rover, above and beyond.
This is Nick from Insure and Go. Every October, the Mekong River releases balls of fire into the sky. Some people think it's a mythical serpent. The obvious answer. Some think it's methane gas, but scientists have poo-pooed this idea. Others think it could be man-made, but surely if it's man-made, someone would have come forward by now. It's been going on for centuries. I like to think that if the Thames started shooting fireballs into the sky, it would be properly looked into.
For more travel trivia and travel insurance, of course, visit Insure and Go. Take us away with you.
Hello, I'm your smoke alarm. I'm just hanging out up here on the ceiling. Could you possibly get up here and test me by pressing my button? I meant kind of like now. You seem to spend a lot of time pressing buttons on your phone. But can your phone wake you and your family up in the night to save your lives? Because I can, if I'm working. So remembering to test me is crucial. How about we take it from the top? Hello, I'm your smoke alarm. Please test me now.
Smoke alarms. They need to work to keep you safe. Press to test. Monthly is best.
Days and weeks can fly by, but if you're worried it's cancer, time can slow down and almost stop. That's why, with Bupa Health Insurance, you can call us about any symptom of cancer without seeing your GP first. Depending on your cover and your symptoms, we could even refer you to a consultant there and then. Bupa Health Insurance. For living. To find out more, search Bupa. Direct access services may not be available for some underwriting methods, and you may need to provide evidence the conditions are not pre-existing.
Speech radio with a difference.
The late night alternative with Ian Lee. You can call in about literally anything you want.
Experience the unconventional, the unpredictable, and the completely unorthodox.
Exactly.
With rule-free Ian Lee.
Descended into chaos.
The late night alternative with Ian Lee.
I've got a very poor internet connection.
Tomorrow tomorrow night from 10 on Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online and on DAB, the Independent Republic of Mike Graham on Talk Radio.
Blasted rhetoric from the Banana Republic for people who think capital punishment isn't going nearly far enough.
Join me, the Reverend Mike Graham. Revolutionary, rebellious, rebuilt, rebranded.
Dangerous mid-morning debate with the great dictator.
The Independent Republic of Mike Graham.
Tomorrow morning from 10
on Talk Radio.
The Unexplained with Howard Hughes on Talk Radio.
And just to point out, of course, opinions differ on the existence of ghosts. We know that. Some people think it's all nonsense, and some people think there might be something in it. Me, of course, professionally, I have to sit right in the middle, apart from the fact that I saw that geezer in that tower in Liverpool. OK, let's get to Bas Lansdorp now. He is and he doesn't do a lot of radio interviews, so we're very lucky to get him on here tonight. Bas Lansdorp is the head of Mars One. They are the people who are hoping to establish a colony of human beings on Mars by the year 2031. Their budget, as established so far, is about $6 billion. I caught up with him earlier this evening and asked him how it was all going.
Yeah, things are really moving in the right direction here. As we talked about last time, we have our listing at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange now. The share is currently not trading because we had to do a new prospectus. We're making some good progress on that, so we expect to be trading soon. And then we can really start doing the exciting things in Mars One.
OK, and where will you be going first, then, with the progress on the exciting things? You know, what is next on the agenda? Because your timetable slipped a little, didn't it?
Not since last time we spoke. The timetable is the same. So the next important steps are that we want to hire some really good team members, so ex-NASA, ex-Lockheed team members that have already, from a programmatics point, organized missions to Mars for NASA, that have built hardware for missions to Mars from, for example, Lockheed. That's really experience that we need to add to the team. We want to do the next round of astronaut selections. So we currently have 100 round-3 candidates that are waiting for the next challenge to determine who are going to be hired full-time to train for the mission. We want to bring together those 100 people and really give them team challenges and see who can deal with the challenge of going to Mars and who cannot. And we want to do the next feasibility studies. We've done 3 so far, 1 with Lockheed Martin, 2 with other aerospace companies. And we want to do all the next feasibility studies and take the ones that we've already done to the next level to also technically push the mission to the next level.
Right. Money is a problem with this, of course, always, isn't it? You had an initial budget, I think, of $6 billion. A lot of people online that I've read about today, and I've read their comments, have been very, very skeptical about that $6 billion, saying it's not nearly enough, and we don't know how you're going to raise that money. What do you have to say to them?
I think a lot of people forget the difference between a permanent settlement mission, a one-way trip, and a return mission. So the lowest cost estimate that NASA ever gave was about $65 billion. And the cost of space exploration is to a large extent related to mass, because it's very expensive to launch things, it's expensive to build technology for space. And the amount of mass that you need for a permanent settlement mission, the one-way trip where you don't need the return rocket, is roughly 10% of the mass of a return mission. So that is one way of coming up to this $6 billion cost figure. That's not the way we did it. The way we came up with this cost estimate is by talking to the aerospace companies that are going to build our technology. We've discussed our budgets with them, so they're not quotes of these companies yet, but they are cost indications. And the companies have given us feedback on our estimates. They've said it needs to be a little bit higher, a little bit lower in some cases, and that's where the $6 billion comes from. So this is really a number that does not just come from us, it comes from the industry that will build our technology. Then how do we raise it? Well, fortunately, we need $6 billion over the next 14 years. Fortunately, we don't need an average of roughly $500 million per year. We need about $10 million this year to do the steps that I just discussed. Then we need 30 next year to take all the technical things to the next level, especially. And then the cost goes up. But that also gives us time to build the business, to build the for-profit part of the company that needs to generate larger revenues. And our projections say that we can do this in this timeline. But of course, I won't be intransparent about that. There's certainly the possibility that we will not be able to financially keep up with our plans, and that we might have to announce in 4 or 5 or 6 years another delay for the human mission. But I think that's okay. I think as long as Mars One can show good progress, show that we're moving in the right direction, then it's okay if we have a small delay.
One of the things we talked about last time was the fact that a key part, a cornerstone of the Mars One mission is getting a media partner who would be recording every aspect of the mission, all the ups and the downs and all the progress that you make. And that would be turned into a movie or a major documentary. There would be, a money-spinning opportunity there. From what I've been reading, and I might be wrong, you've been having difficulty securing that media partner. Is that right?
Actually, the plan currently is not to find an overall media partner, but to produce the content ourselves, or not to produce the content ourselves. We need a good production partner for it, but to broadcast the content ourselves. Because the advantage that we have if we do that is that you can achieve much better conversion if you have your content online than when you have your content on TV. So if online people like what we're showing them, and we tell them at the end of the documentary film, please consider subscribing to the newsletter, or please consider a donation to Mars One. Those are things that people can much more easily do than when you have a documentary series on Nat Geo or Discovery Channel, because there's no way to click your TV screen. So we need a really good production partner, and we've already found it. We haven't announced it yet because we want to do that when we're actually going to produce the content. But we have an excellent production partner that is that makes beautiful content for Nat Geo, for Discovery Channel and other broadcasters, and they will produce the documentary series, for example, about astronaut selection. But we expect to release it online on either YouTube or on our own channel.
Right, so initially that material will be free to see, and you think that will start generating interest, and that will allow you to make better and bigger productions that will generate the revenue that you need.
And actually, we don't expect that in the next 5 to 10 years that the content will actually be worth significant amounts of funding. We expect that the content will attract larger groups of people who will then come to the website, who will buy a T-shirt, who will apply to be an astronaut. And of course, a big following for Mars One is more attractive for potential partners. So, for example, we've just announced a deal with Honda. Honda is using one of our candidates and the name of Mars One in a TV commercial in the United States. And the bigger our following, the better brand awareness Mars One has, the more these kinds of partnerships are worth commercially to those kinds of partners.
Is it a worry that SpaceX and Elon Musk seem to be getting so much media coverage and seem to be ticking all the boxes and doing everything right at the moment? We saw the Falcon launch recently, and of course Elon Musk's Roadster flying around in space. They're getting all the headlines and you're not.
We're really happy that SpaceX is making such good progress. SpaceX is of course a technology provider, and we are not. So we would like to be their customer for their hardware going to Mars. So we can only be happy that SpaceX is making such good progress. SpaceX does not have its own plans for a mission to Mars. They're only building the transportation systems, and they will be needing customers, and we can be one of them.
One of the things, and I don't know whether it's necessarily a fair criticism to make, but I'm sure you'll have heard it. One of the things I read today was that some people say, and of course people are always going to want to put their 2 cents in, Buzz, you know that, they're going to want to have their say, but one of the things people were saying was that you were, how do I put this, you are relying on technology that other organizations like SpaceX and like Lockheed are developing, and in order to make this happen within the timescale that you're talking about, or anything like it, you have to be giving the technology developments a little bit of impetus yourself. You can't just sit back and expect other organizations to develop it. Is that a fair criticism?
No, I think the opposite is true, actually. I believe that you can only do this human mission to Mars if you are not developing the technology yourself. And the good thing, again, this is only because we are doing a mission of permanent settlement that it's even feasible to do it in such a timeline. And since we don't need the return mission, there is no need for new technology development. There's need for new systems development, but it's applied engineering. We know how to launch things. We know how to keep humans alive in space. So on the way to Mars, it's from a life support systems point of view, there's not much difference to the International Space Station. We know how to land equipment on Mars, and the equipment for our mission is much smaller than the equipment for a return mission, so we can use systems that are very comparable to the current technology that has landed hardware on Mars. So why would we reinvent the wheel if the wheel is already out there, or at least versions of the wheel that approach very much what we need?
And I suppose the important thing that you have to do is to train and refine those people that you've got. It's 100 people, isn't it? The training, I think, started last year, didn't it? How's it going?
So we're still in selection, so we're not training yet. We had originally more than 200,000 people registering their interest on our website to be on one of the teams. We narrowed it down now to 100 round-3 candidates. And we want to bring them together to give them team challenges. So that's the first time we're actually starting to select people into the program instead of selecting people out who we believe are really not the right persons. And we hope to do that somewhere towards the end of this year. And that I think is going to be one of the most exciting storytelling components of Mars One, and bringing them together and showing the world what does it take for a crew to actually do this mission to Mars.
I think somebody that I read today suggested that the criteria, the selection process, was not perhaps as rigorous as it might be. What sorts of attributes do the people who come forward, the ones that you really want, what will they have? What have they got?
Well, we're selecting for team skills because that's the biggest challenge of going to Mars. They're going to be together for 7 months on the way to Mars in a relatively small spaceship. Then they're going to land on the surface. They find about 250 square meters of living area, where they're going to live for 2 years until the second crew joins them. So that group isolation, that is their biggest challenge. What we've done so far is really only selecting out. And you can select out quite efficiently or quickly, because first of all, if you make a mistake, it's obviously not nice for the person who got selected out while he or she might have been the right person. But for us, it's not such a big drama because we've got so many people who registered. So we're selecting out, for example, we did a 15-minute interview in the end of round 2. And a 15-minute interview sounds very short, but of course, if the only thing you're looking for is that people studied their materials that we sent them, or if you can determine in 15 minutes that they did not, well, then you're out. And you don't need to talk any longer to someone who did not answer the right questions because he didn't study the material. So far, it's absolutely right that we've been rather quick, and now the detailed stuff is going to start because now we're going to look for those team skills. And that is really difficult. So we're going to bring them together, give them the team challenges over a period of 5 days, see who works well together, who does not. Also start the process of forming the teams of 4. Because in round 4 we're going to test teams of 4, so teams who will already have been composed, but not selected to train yet, and we'll test those teams that have been freshly composed for their ability to be in group isolation together for a short period of time. That's round 4. And the teams that deal with this best, those will be hired full-time to start training for the mission. But then actually we are still selecting, because it's very feasible that to expect that many of the teams that we select are not going to make it, either because we don't think they're good enough, or because someone decides they don't want to go anymore, or because someone gets sick and is not qualified to go anymore. So, because we're training them for more than 10 years, so there's a real chance that someone will get a disease. So this is only the start. We've only just begun, and we're going to look for the best teams, because going to Mars is the ultimate team challenge.
So you're going to have many more people who are going to be on the cusp of doing this than you will actually ultimately use. As you say, it's a long process. It's 10 years. Some people will decide their priorities have changed. Some people will go off the idea. Sadly, some people will get sick. So how many people will be in this core group, the group that will be moving forward that won't necessarily be involved in the missions?
So we expect to have ultimately between 10 and 15 teams, so between 40 and 60 people training full-time for the mission. And don't forget that we are really training teams. That means that if one person from a team drops out, then the whole team is out, because since it's such a challenging team challenge, if you replace one team member, he or she will always be the outsider in the team, the newbie. So if we select out a team, we need to start over and train a fresh team. And that's why we're selecting.
That's rough, isn't it? That's rough on the other 3 people who have to go.
Yes, it is rough, but it's even more rough for the person who comes into that team as a newbie, and it will just not work. And then it's rough for the whole team and for the whole mission. So it's the most important thing is that we find the best teams, and unfortunately that's a consequence of this big challenge.
Give me a rough snapshot of the average kind of person who applies for this. Are we talking about a university undergraduate, maybe a graduate of a university, somebody who's involved in science? You know, what sorts of people are in your sights at the moment?
Well, we really have people from all walks of life. Don't forget that we'll train them for more than 10 years, so that's more than enough time for an engineering degree and a medical degree. So we can really train them for the skills that they need, except for team skills, because of course either you have them or you don't. If you have them, we can make you a little bit better, but if you don't have them, you're never going to become a good team player. So that's the most important thing. So right now we have 50 men and 50 women, because it was a hard requirement for our selection process. Just like in each team, there will be 2 men and 2 women. But when we had the initial application open, we had more men. I believe it was about 70% male, 30% female. There was definitely a bias towards science and engineering groups, but there were also, basically any profession that you can think of was part of the 200,000 initial registrations. So we had a hairdresser, someone from the army, someone from politics. Really anything that you can imagine was part of that initial group, and also all ages. But again, an emphasis on between 30 and 40 years old. There was a relatively high percentage. But again, from all ages, there were people applying. The oldest person that applied, I say this off the top of my head, but I believe it was a lady. She was 82 years old. She didn't make it through the first selection round.
So you're right.
But it shows. Yeah, I mean, it shows how broad the interest has been.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's fantastic that somebody of 82 you'd even consider, even if they didn't get through the first round. What is the cut-off age then? Presumably it's got to be in the 40s, maybe early 50s?
Yeah, it's not really an age, it's a cut-off hole. Because there's 35-year-olds that can barely get out of their chair, and there's 70-year-olds that run 10 marathons per year. I mean, take my dad, he's 71. And he still runs 10-kilometer matches. So it's difficult to really give an age, but what's very important is that you are not dependent on any type of medicine, simply because it's very challenging on Mars to provide good medical care. Practically, I think the upper age for going to Mars would be somewhere between 65 and 72, 73. But as I said, it's much more dependent on health than on age.
What sorts of tests do you put them through?
So as I said, we're not really testing in person yet. So far it's been.
Okay, sorry. What sort of tests will you put them through when you get to the stage where you've got the teams of 4 and you're scrutinising them? What will they have to do?
So in the next round, we're giving them team challenges. So it could be things where they really need to work together, but it could also be things where they cannot work together. And how do you deal with that as a team? So, for example, do you know those wooden puzzles where you have to take a ring of a wooden structure with a rope?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're popular in over there, but it's really a puzzle that only one person can work on. So what if you give that to a group of 10 people? What happens? Do they simply pick the best person, or do they try to work together? Those are really interesting things to see. Or you give 5 people a cable, you blindfold all of them, and they have to make a perfect square out of the piece of rope that they got. So all these kinds of challenges where communication, teamwork are very important. And then, as I said, the 4th round is group isolation. So they will be locked up in a small environment where they will be very close to each other for example, somewhere between 3 and 10 days, and we see how they deal with that, because it's really, for some people, this is a experience that they don't want to be in, even if they didn't think that about themselves.
Well, there's claustrophobia, there's the fact that you're cut off from family and friends, but then you would be if you were sent up to Mars. You wouldn't be seeing those people at all, and you would be in a confined space. Exactly.
So we really need to test them for that, and then when we hire them and we start training them for the mission, we will keep testing them. So they will be in a copy of the Mars outpost here on Earth, and they will be in there at least once per year for an extended period of time. They won't know how long they'll be going in, so there's no countdown possible. And on Earth, we'll give them a really hard time, so everything will break, everything will go wrong, and we'll put malfunctions on top of each other that statistically will never happen on Mars. But we need to see how do they deal with the enormous stress of those kinds of things happening, and then that gives us a good prediction for how they will deal with it when they are on Mars.
Do you put them through tests, or will you put them through tests that will assess how well they cope with death around them? Because no matter how well you plan this thing, some people are likely, whether they get sick, whether they have an accident, whether there's an equipment malfunction, some people are likely to die, and the other team members will have to adjust themselves and will have to pick themselves up and carry on.
Yeah, we've thought about how to deal with the testing the groups for loss, but the challenge is that it's very difficult to test because one of the ideas was we select teams of 6 first, so 3 men and 3 women, and then after 2 years in training, so they've really been training for 2 years together as employees of Mars 1, then 2 of them are selected out, 1 male and 1 female. But the challenge is that even if the group deals with that very well, with the loss of 2 team members that they've been training with for 2 years, that doesn't mean that this new group, because it's really a new group then, it doesn't mean that that new group can also deal with it. So if it doesn't really give you any more information, then it's probably better not to give them such a psychological trauma. So we've decided to not directly test for it in such a way. We will need to investigate, but don't forget it's also something that people on Earth need to deal with. We all lose people in our lives because our life on Earth is also one way. All of us, or at least many of us, will die right here on Earth, and at some point in time you lose people around you, and well, we all need to deal with that. And
what do you think about that? Bas Lansdorp, the man who runs Mars 1. Now, just in case you hadn't heard about them, you will be hearing more about them. They are the organisation that is, as you heard, raising money and making progress, they say, towards putting a colony of people, human beings like you and me, on the surface of the red planet. They've got a timescale for it, and that timescale is 2022 demonstration mission. 2026, they're going to send a probe up there, and that's the point at which they seriously and earnestly start to build the settlement that these people will live in, because it will be robotically built. Then the first people go there. 2030, 2031 is when it's all set to kick off. A remarkable thing, but just think about how all that would work. If you were part of this, you would have to commit to going to Mars, which is an enormous risk-filled flight that will take a long time. But you go there, and you have to go there with the knowledge that you ain't coming back. And you have to make the best of it. You're with a bunch of people who will be your life mates for the duration until you shuffle off this mortal Martian coil. It's a fascinating thought. A lot of naysayers online saying it's never going to happen, but as you heard, Bas Lansdorp is making the plans, and it sounds very optimistic, so we'll keep in touch with him. I think you'll find here on The Unexplained. Next hour, Seth Shostak is here again. An update for 2018. We talk with him about once a year on the radio show on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. How's it going? Are we getting any nearer? Identifying, finding ET? Are they sending us signals? Are we missing those signals? How's it all progressing? We'll find out coming next.
Talk Radio, the 21st century dream team of dialogue, debate and discourse.
Talk Radio. Give it some lip.
Whoa, what's with the massive spotlight?
It's your local Dulux Decorator Centre, centering on you.
On me?
On you and all our customers. See, everything we do, from online ordering 24/7 to rewarding you with nectar points, is centred on you. Blinding, eh?
Blinding? I need my shades from the van.
From time-saving online ordering to nectar points with every purchase, you'll be happy talking to Dulux Decorator Centre. Find out more at duluxdecoratorcentre.co.uk or your local store. Dulux Decorator Centre, centred on you. Open Good Friday and Easter Monday.
You can say anything to a mate. Anything. Call them every name under the sun. Wind them up. Bring them down a peg. Tell them stuff you never thought you'd tell anyone. Because they're proper mates. Like brothers. When it's a mate, you say what you feel like saying. Except, I love you, man. And I'm not going to let you drink drive. Stupid, innit? Mates don't let mates drink drive. Think.
Cast your mind back and think. Were you ever contacted out of the blue for a pension review? Were you advised to move your work or personal pension into a SIP, self-invested personal pension?
Yes, I was.
You could be due thousands if you were missold. Money Redress are trusted claim specialists in pension and investment mis-selling. They'll manage the whole claim for you on a no payout, no fee basis, so you can't lose. Text WIN to 85077.
Monopoly is back at McDonald's, and with millions of chances to win stuff like Mini Coopers, Skystorm movie vouchers and McDonald's food prizes, winning feels as likely as hearing a guitar solo in an 80s rock song. With that many chances to win with Monopoly at McDonald's, you'd better get peeling. Ends 1st of May. Selected items in UK restaurants from 10:30am. Subject to availability. 16 or over to play. For price conditions and other rules, visit mcdonalds.co.uk/monopoly or see in restaurants.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio. For those about to talk, we salute you.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio, on the hour news headlines.
From the Sky News Centre at midnight, Jewish community leaders have launched a scathing attack on Jeremy Corbyn, claiming he sided with anti-Semites again and again. That's despite the Labour leader apologising earlier for pockets of anti-Semitism within his party. He says he's sincerely sorry for pain caused to the Jewish community and the rest of the country. Our political correspondent Tom Rayner says the statement comes ahead of a planned protest.
It appears to have been prompted by the announcement by the Jewish Leadership Council and the Board of Deputies of British Jews that they would be holding a demonstration in Parliament Square tomorrow afternoon under the banner Enough is Enough.
37 people have died in a fire at a shopping centre in Russia, but many more are still reported missing. There are TV pictures of people jumping out of the building in the city of Kemerovo in Siberia. It's not yet clear how it started. 3 people have been arrested in Barcelona after protesters clashed with police following the arrest in Germany of Carlos Puigdemont. The former Catalan leader is due in court on Monday following Spain's decision to reactivate an international arrest warrant against him. A police officer who was slashed with a sword in Greater Manchester has been released from hospital. A man's been arrested after the incident yesterday. The head of the International Cricket Council says the game needs to look at itself following Australia captain Steve Smith's ban for ball tampering. He'll miss the final test of their series with South Africa, and he stood down as skipper for the last day of their defeat in Cape Town. Smith's also been fined, along with Cameron Bancroft, who committed the offence. Australian cricket legend Shane Warne was asked if he should stay in charge.
Probably not. Instant reaction now with emotion and anger and things like that. You probably have to say not. It's in real jeopardy about whether he'll be captain again.
And Simon Cowell's entertainment company is making a new Saturday night talent series which could rival ITV's X Factor. Psycho is producing The Greatest Dancer for the BBC. That's the latest. I'm Barry Weir.
The Unexplained with Howard Hughes on Talk Radio.
In the midnight hour, this is Howard Hughes at The Unexplained. Good to have you there wherever you happen to be. I know we have a pretty big surge in people listening internationally at this time of night. So if you're in the US, if you're in Australia, I know I've got listeners there at the moment. Wherever you happen to be, good to have you on board. We're going to talk about one of the most popular subjects that we ever talk about on The Unexplained now. It is what has become known by the acronym SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And the man who runs the SETI Institute in the United States is back online to us now. Seth Shostak is here. Seth, thank you for coming on again, my friend.
It's a pleasure, Howard.
Now, we've got a lot to talk about, and I've also got some questions from listeners here that they've sent in to me in advance of this. Just to point out to our listener, this segment has had to be pre-recorded because of Seth's commitments in the US, so literally we're recording this a couple of hours before you hear it on the Sunday. Talk to me about you then, Seth Shostak. For people who are new to hearing you on my podcast at theunexplained.tv or on this radio show, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? That bespeaks an identity crisis I've had for a long time. But actually, I am the senior astronomer at the SETI Institute, and we're here in the Silicon Valley of California. We're interested in the nature of life, but also where could we find it, and that includes, of course, looking for intelligent life. So I'm part of the project to look for evidence that ET is out there.
And what do you have to be to get a gig like that?
Well, I suppose fortunate, but I think that the total number of people in the world, by the way, who are doing what we do here in terms of trying to find intelligent life or evidence for intelligent life is maybe fewer than work at the local McDonald's here. It's a very, very niche field because there's no government funding for it. But, my background is in physics and astronomy. I have a PhD in astronomy.
So, Seth, we've spoken so many times, and I don't think I've ever asked you this question. Why is it that your government, or indeed our government and other governments, are not funding this? You know, they want to get out there into the stars, but they don't want to do this particular research to try and find signals from perhaps intelligent life out there.
Yes, well, I think that's an excellent question, Howard, for which I don't have an excellent answer. It's largely politics here in this country, I have to say. There was a time when NASA was doing SETI research. In fact, when I joined the SETI Institute, which was, just before the Battle of the Bulge, I have to say that NASA was doing this. We had, 50 employees and a reasonable amount of money. And that's when I started working here. Now, since then, the NASA program was canceled. Why was it canceled? Strictly political reasons. Had nothing to do with the merits of it. NASA continues to spend a lot of money looking for life on Mars, as you know. But on the other hand, I think that the public is more interested in life that isn't just pond scum. So I don't know why they don't do it. I think it's all politics.
Well, this is an interesting thing, isn't it? NASA is in a race with the likes of SpaceX and Bas Lansdorp from Mars One and potentially others to actually physically get to Mars. And yet they don't want to compete. They don't want to be involved in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence from sensors and, dishes down here. It's bizarre, isn't it? In this field, is the private sector involved? I know that you're a foundation, so you're not strictly speaking the private sector. But is the private sector trying to do this?
Well, to begin with, I don't think it's really accurate to say that NASA is not involved in it. I think NASA would be happy to do it. They certainly were happy to do it. It was killed by Congress. It was killed by a politician, not by NASA. So, it was always 1/10 of a hundredth. Put it a different way. It was 1/1000th of the NASA budget when it was going full blast. 1/1000th of the NASA budget. It cost every American taxpayer maybe 3 cents a year. That's what they were spending. So it wasn't a big burden. But once it was out of NASA, it's very hard to get it back in. And that's, just a matter of, well, there's room for it anymore, that kind of thing. So it's strictly political. But you're right. I mean, NASA is competing with the private sector for, and I'm not even sure I would say competing. They're probably happy to give the private sector a job, lifting groceries into space and stuff like that for the International Space Station. But the private sector has not stepped up to SETI. Some individual they've put in some big money. But, it's hard to justify spending on SETI for private organizations simply because are they going to make money at it?
Now, we are told there is intelligent life in the White House at the moment. Something else we can't really comment on, but is Mr. Trump, who seems to be quite positive, at least in terms of the private sector of space exploration, is he aware of your work, and do you think you might be able to tempt him to give you some, at least, moral support?
Well, I really can't answer that. I don't know that he's aware. He certainly never indicated any awareness of this. He's also, to be honest, not said very much about NASA. NASA costs the taxpayers $15 billion a year. I think that Mr. Trump likes the idea of space exploration. I don't get the impression that he knows much about what the goals of this exploration are, what NASA is doing, and so forth and so on. And I think that this search for extraterrestrial intelligence, while he might find that interesting, I'm not sure that it's ever been brought to his attention.
He's certainly aware of perhaps having a base on the moon, which could be an interesting thing. I wanted to talk to you about that in a little while. So, maybe he could be persuaded. Who knows, he might even be listening to this. And if he isn't, he should be, is what I'll say. There was a story, I think, about a month ago, maybe a little bit further back in this year than that, about a signal being detected from space. Of course, we get these stories maybe twice, 3 times a year. Whenever you see those stories, your phone goes, of course, and a journalist on the other end says, Seth, is this the big one? What sorts of an answer can you give to a question like that?
Well, the usual reply will be the honest one, which is to say, we don't know yet. And in order to know, you have to verify those signals. I mean, there have been, as you say, 2 or 3 per year where people claim, the Russians picked up this signal coming from this and that star system. And until you've actually tried to verify it by pointing your antennas in the same direction, well, you'll just not know. One thing that helps is to look at the source of the information. If it's credible, if it's coming from an organization that has people who understand what they're doing, they have legitimate technology, then you might give it a little bit more credence. But in general, until you verify it, you really don't know. I mean, there have been signals in the past, like the celebrated WOW signal, that look very much like what you'd expect from ET, if you will. And we still don't know whether that was ET or merely some interference.
We don't? Okay. Well, that was 1977, wasn't it? I've actually got an article about it here. The sound of extraterrestrials was heard by human ears for the first time, according to this article, or so people thought. The WOW signal was detected by an astronomer called Jerry Technique, I think is the way to say that, using Ohio State University Big Ear radio telescope. Look, I'm old enough to remember back then. There was a tremendous hoo-ha about this. It was a more innocent time, of course. We didn't have the internet. Everybody was not able to give their 2 cents worth, which they are now. There was a tremendous frisson about this thing. Just give me your recollections of the WOW signal and what became of it.
Well, indeed, it occurred at Ohio State University, and they had a big radio antenna at the time. It's subsequently been dismantled, and the whole place has been turned into a golf course. Which, I don't know what that says, but in any case, it had kind of lost its ability to do cutting-edge astronomy. The Ohio State Radio Observatory's big ear antenna, it had been supplanted by other telescopes around the world that had more capability. So they just let it sit there all night long and all day long, for that matter, just taking data as the sky, passed over the antenna because of the rotation of the Earth. So they're just sitting there sort of scanning the skies. And every morning, there was a big amount of computer printout. Back in those days, computers talk to you via paper, really. And one of the astronomers involved in the project, a guy by the name of Jerry Amon, whom we've already referenced, he would come into the shack every couple of days, and he would look through this paper printout, this stack of results. One day he came by, and he found a signal that was so strong that he wrote the word "wow" next to it. This is the triumph, perhaps, of marketing over product. I don't know, because, the other signals that had been found in that year, and there were many, by the way, they did have a nifty name like WOW. So WOW became, as you say, celebrated. It's still celebrated, but a lot of that has to do with its name. There were literally dozens of other signals that were found once. The WOW signal was not found a second time, and that's important. We've looked ourselves for many, many days in the same direction, trying to pick up the WOW signal again. Others have done the same. Nobody has ever found it.
And why were they looking at that time? And of course, the instrumentation, the equipment was all more primitive than it is now. You can do these things much more easily and much more sensitively now. But why were they looking at the constellation of Sagittarius, which is where this thing came out of?
Well, to be honest, they weren't looking at any particular. They were just looking at all the sky that can be seen from Ohio. And what they would do is they would, set up the telescope and then let it run, at some given altitude above the horizon. And then, just take data for 24 hours or 48 hours or as long as they wanted, actually. And people may have noticed, if they go out more than once at night, that the sky, rotates above their heads. That's just because of the turning of the Earth. And so, eventually all the sky visible from the Midwest would pass over the telescope and data would be taken. And the fact that this happened to be in any particular constellation was not part of a plan. That was just when it came up.
And what was the nature of the signal? Was it regular, harmonic? What was it?
Yeah, people, musicians like to make compositions on the basis of the printout numbers, which were numbers between 0 and 9 plus A, B, C, D, E, F, just to, if you will, increase the number of levels they could measure. But the signal just started from 0 and it went up to a peak and then it went back down to 0 again. So, right? And if you listen to it, and you couldn't listen to it because they didn't have any equipment for that, but all you would hear is what's called white noise. It would be like turning on your kitchen faucet and listening to that. I mean, it's interesting for a while, but after a couple hours, you probably turn it off, right? It's not terribly interesting. So, all it was exactly the kind of signal you would expect if some transmitter up there happened to pass over the antennas. So it starts, of course, at 0, and then it gets into the field of view of the antenna, it gets louder, and then it passes through and it gets softer again. Exactly what you expect for a signal coming from deep space.
Now, a lot of science is about removing from the realm of possibility those things which it can't be. So, over the years, with this WOW signal that behaved in the way that you so musically described, what have we ruled out then?
Very little, actually. Nobody knows what the WOW signal was. Maybe it was ET, but one should keep in mind that the Ohio State Radio Observatory's antenna had the ability to look at 2 spots on the sky at once, not just one. And it was set up in such a way that after one part of the cosmos had passed overhead, it was looked at again, that same spot, with a second receiver. So it took a little over a minute for the second observation to take place. Well, what happened with the WOW signal is that it was found the first time, but 70 seconds later, it was not seen. So what does that mean? I mean, it tells you that, well, maybe it was, ET, and he was on the air, but, after a minute he got bored and turned off his transmitter. Or, maybe he went to lunch, or who knows? It also could be that there was some sort of interference. Maybe there was some equipment in Ohio, not very far from this antenna, that had been turned on and then was turned off. I mean, until you can find it again, you really don't know. It's like hearing a noise in the attic. And you think, well, I mean, I don't know what it could be, but it could be ghosts. It could be. And you go up to the attic and you look around, you don't see any ghosts.
I read something today that indicated or suggested that an irregular signal, like this one, was actually, and I think you kind of hinted that just a second ago, Seth, an irregular signal is more interesting than a regular one, because an irregular signal is, as you say, the sign of somebody flipping a switch and turning something on and then turning it off.
Well, that could be. It's also the case that those kinds of signals you get all the time in SETI, because there are thousands of satellites orbiting the Earth, and the ones that are still alive, there are a lot of dead ones, their batteries ran out or whatever. The live ones are sending information back to Earth, and they're sending information back mostly on radio waves, in fact exclusively on radio waves, and often at the same sorts of frequencies that we're searching for ET on. So, that satellite passes overhead and you get a signal, and then it goes below the horizon, you don't get a signal, so that sounds the same. I mean, you don't really know. It wasn't irregular, it was just something that came in from, in a way that looked just like a signal coming from deep space, and that's about all you can say. It could have been ET, it could have been humans. We don't know.
And this year it'll be 41 years since it was detected. And you say that work is still being done on this.
It is. Many people, at least several, have spent time on very large antenna arrays with equipment that's much more sensitive than the original experiment in Ohio, trying to find the wow signal again. It would be great to find wow too, because then you could learn something. If you found it again, you say, you know what? That's less likely to be human interference. That might be really ET. But they've never found it. Hasn't been seen again. It's like continuing to go up into the attic and looking around and never seeing anything again. And so we still don't know what it was that made that sound like rustling chains or whatever it sounded.
And in the 41 years that you said it sounded like a tap, as we call it, a faucet, as you call it, being turned on and left running. In those intervening 41 years, has any signal that was rather like that been identified?
Well, all signals from the cosmos would sound like that. We don't know what it sounded like, to be really honest, because we never convert these signals into audio. Right? We don't turn them into audio because they would be rather uninteresting. You can point a radio telescope at a quasar or a pulsar or anything like that. If you point at a quasar, all you're going to hear is just like a tap, as you say. If you point it toward a pulsar, yes, it's very regular, but it still sounds like a tap being regularly.
Right. So what it looks like is more interesting than what it sounds like, which which may go for. They go for a lot of people in this world. Now, Seth Shostak from the SETI Institute is online to us here at The Unexplained at Talk Radio. We will reconnect with him during the commercial break here, and we'll be straight back with him in just a moment. Stay here.
Talk Radio. Dial up some dialogue.
Talk Radio. We'll get you talking.
Over 50% of UK businesses pay their employees through Sage Payroll. It's easy to set up and helps you stay compliant with workplace and pension regulations. Pay your employees in seconds, and for real peace of mind, you can speak to our experts when you need help most. Accounting, payroll and payments. Sage Business Cloud takes care of it all. Visit sage.com/get started. Be Sage. Build on.
So, I think you might have forgotten about me. I'm up here on the ceiling. You smoke alarm? Maybe I've slipped your mind, but the thing is, I might not be working. That means I might not be able to warn you if there's a fire. I know I sound anxious, and you might not realise it's a matter of life and death, but if you think about it, it kind of is. So, how about you just press my button, make me beep, and we can all rest easy? What do you reckon?
Smoke alarms. They need to work to keep you safe. Press to test,
monthly is best.
Whoa, what's with the massive spotlight?
It's your local Dulux Decorator Centre, centering on you.
On me?
On you and all our customers. See, everything we do, from online ordering 24/7 to rewarding you with Nectar points, is centred on you. Blinding, eh?
Blinding? I need my shades from the van.
From time-saving online ordering to Nectar points with every purchase, you'll be happy talking to Dulux Decorator Centre. Find out more at duluxdecoratorcentre.co.uk or your local store. Dulux Decorator Centre, centred on you. Open Good Friday and Easter Monday.
There are so many things that you can take away from the experience.
I learned that I was very much a leader.
I now have confidence to say, this is me, this is who I am. I definitely think that NCS helps people find their passions.
It's made me a more outgoing person.
The adventure, meeting new people, new experiences.
It's the best feeling.
It's completely changed my life.
I am a more confident individual as a result. It's amazing. I wouldn't change any moment of it. I feel powerful, incredible.
Unstoppable. Search NCS to find out more.
The Unexplained with Howard Hughes on Talk Radio.
Back with Seth Shostak, the boss of the SETI Institute in the United States, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence here. One of the coolest things we talk about. We were talking about the most famous, maybe, in history, detected signal from outer space that appeared for a very short time to be anomalous. The WOW signal 41 years ago, 1977. And we heard that people like Seth are still researching this. It has not repeated, but it is still raising eyebrows, and it has still remained over these years unexplained. What was the protocol then, Seth, and what might the protocol be now had the WOW signal turned out to be something more than it actually was at the time? You know, if it was something that was repeating, maybe it resolved itself into a message, you would then have something that you would need to tell the world about. What was the protocol back in 77, and has it evolved up to this day?
Well, there was no written protocol in 1977 for SETI. I presume, I mean, I know the people involved, and you know, they were scientists, and what they would have done is simply verified what they had found and then it up. It's usually not very interesting. Now, beginning in the late 80s, the SETI community, such as it was, developed indeed what's called a protocol. That makes it sound a little more important than it is. And that protocol actually was revised in the past 5 or 6 years by a committee that I formed, an international committee, to kind of get clear and make it less inconsistent, which the protocol was. But that protocol, which I'm happy to tell you about, and it's online, it's nothing secret, simply says, look, if you find a signal that looks like it might be the real deal, the first thing you do is check it out. The second thing you do is tell the world. And the third thing you do is refrain from sending any replies without some sort of international consultation. That's what it says. In reality, I can tell you it doesn't actually work that way. In reality, what really happens is if you find a signal that looks like it might be interesting, the media start calling up. That's what actually happens.
And then you have to have an answer for them. And in the absence of anything else, you've just got to level with them, haven't you, and say, okay, this is what we know, this is what we found. I mean, this has happened even in this year. Here's what we know, this is what we found. Don't go jumping up and down about this just yet.
Yes, exactly. I think, for me, the most compelling example of that happened in 1997, so that's more than 20 years ago now. But in any case, there was a signal that looked very much like the real deal that we had found. And, you know, the boss was looking at a protocol, but nobody else was. Everybody else was just trying to verify the signal. The protocol doesn't really help you very much, and it's not an official thing. It isn't that everybody is signed on, you've got to obey the protocol. I mean, you're doing a SETI experiment in, I don't know, Jodrell Bank or something. You don't care about the protocol. It's not anything that the British government is going to enforce, or the UN, or anybody else. But, in fact, much what the protocol says you should do, which is to check it out, mostly to check it out, and then of course you would tell everyone. You by the way, in the course of checking it out, you would also tell many people.
In a world where international relations are deteriorating, you know, the state of play between ourselves here in the UK and Mr. Putin in the Kremlin is not exactly sweet and rosy at the moment, for reasons which have been widely reported in the news and a story which is ongoing. If another country found something, if the Russians, and presumably they are doing this as well, if they found something Could you guarantee that the science community there would actually tell you? Would they share it with you? Would you get to know?
Well, you can be skeptical about whether they would share it. To begin with, they're not doing SETI, believe it or not. They were for a very long time back in the days of the Soviet Union. But in 1991, the Soviet Union imploded. So did their SETI experiments because they just didn't have the money anymore. So as far as we know, they don't come to conferences, they don't write papers, they're not doing anything. And in fact, the entire SETI effort in the world these days, really with some very tiny exceptions, is being conducted here in the United States, which I find kind of remarkable. Up until recently, the Italians had a pretty good experiment, but it's never been done in the UK, best that I know, for example. And not in, France or Germany or Holland. All these are places where you could do this kind of work, but nobody does it.
Talk to me about the technology that you have in 2018. I'm presuming, like all electronics, it's more sensitive, it's cheaper, smaller, lighter, better, more sophisticated, and more able to perhaps detect signals that might be hiding in what might have been in the past electronic noise.
Well, it is, of course, better. I don't know that it seems to occupy a full room no matter how you do it, but...
Seth, we've got a bit of a problem with the connection here. We've got a digital connection going, but it's dropping out from time to time. So if you're listening to this, I do apologise that we've lost the odd second here and there, but I think we've understood what Seth said. So we're just reconnecting with Seth now. We've got connection by old-fashioned telephone. It's so funny. We look for signals millions of miles out into the cosmos, but we can't get a digital one back from Seth in the United States. So we're back on the good old-fashioned telephone that we know always works. And Seth, I want to ask you this question, this time by phone. How has the technology evolved? Because, electronics, you wouldn't know it tonight, but electronics are greatly advanced. They're improving all the time. Things are becoming lighter, cheaper, faster, better. Is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence a little bit like buying a brand new camera? If you buy a brand new camera this year, it's going to allow you to see more clearly and have less background noise than the camera that you might have bought a year or two ago.
Yes, well, it is true that the technology has improved enormously, and it continues to improve following what's known as Moore's Law, named after Gordon Moore. He was one of the co-founders of Intel, the people that may have designed the chip that's in your in your computer there, or your whatever. But in any case, we're in the heart of the Silicon Valley. We're 2 miles from the Googleplex, the headquarters of Google. All the chip manufacturers are here. It's a whole high-tech area. And anybody who has a personal computer or a laptop or whatever knows that every 2 years, the amount of compute power you can buy for a euro doubles. Well, that helps SETI because a lot of what we're doing is technology-based. For example, today we can look at not just 10,000 different channels on the radio dial. That's the state of SETI as it was in the 1980s. Today we can look at 100 million channels at a go. That's a good thing because ET never sent us an email saying, hey, I'll be at 1523 megahertz on the dial. So you have to look at lots and lots of channels. The other thing that we can do is look at more of the sky at once. Look, if you're looking for a needle in a haystack, it pays to have a really big spoon because you might find the needle sooner.
And is it likely, I'm looking here at an article that I saw earlier today from Forbes.com this year, and they were very concerned with this issue, and the headline was, are aliens plentiful, but are we missing them? They think that there's a possibility, the author of this piece on Forbes.com, that actually we may be looking in the wrong places. You said, 4.73 gigahertz, whatever it might be. You're looking there, but maybe the extraterrestrial intelligences are using ultraviolet, infrared, things that we just don't understand properly.
Well, those things we do understand, but, you have to kind of second-guess the aliens. There's no doubt about it, Howard, that, we do the kind of experiment that we think has the greatest probability of success. And we might be missing the proverbial boat because we're looking for radio waves when, in fact, they are not using radio waves to send information around. Maybe they are using just infrared. Ultraviolet isn't such a good bet because ultraviolet gets kind of messed up by the gas and dust between the stars, but infrared doesn't, so maybe we should be looking for infrared. To some extent we are. It's hard to look for infrared from the ground because of the atmosphere of the Earth, but we try and figure out what is the best scheme. One possibility that was brought up in a conference here 2 weeks ago, look for neutrinos, right? Well, that's an old idea, but we still don't do it for various technical reasons. Look, we don't know, and maybe we're as naive as were the scientists of the 1850s and 1860s who suggested that we should look for, geometric patterns on the surface of Mars, or, even aliens on the moon. They had schemes for that. None of them would have worked. So, yeah, you don't know what you don't know, but if you don't try, you're not likely to find anything either.
Well, that's true. One of the other things this article involves is to make matters worse, electromagnetic signals that we are sending out from Earth. That's not just, that's not just people searching for beings from space. I know you don't emit, you receive. But, the stuff we put out, and that's everything, television and radio broadcasts, everything. All of those things are diminishing because we are transmitting in other ways. We're using the internet, that's cables, but we have other ways to transmit. So we are putting out fewer signals, according to this article, than we used to. And that means the possibility that something out there might, like that movie Contact with Jodie Foster all those years ago, might find an old television signal of ours. The prospects of that happening are diminishing because we are emitting less.
That's somewhat true. The television broadcasters, which produce very large signals, no doubt about it, are, not distributing television signals the way they used to. It's either digital television, which is, less easy to find for the aliens, or it's coming in via direct broadcast satellite or a cable or a fiber optic or something. All of that is kind of true, but one shouldn't get too swayed by the developments of the moment. Right. What we still use radio waves for are things like radar. And we have more radar transmitters than we've probably ever had. And they're very powerful. They're the strongest signals leaving the Earth. So the fact that the television signals are less than they were maybe doesn't really represent a huge trend. Just because the technology was developed a long time ago doesn't mean that it becomes obsolete. I mean, the wheel is, a fairly old invention, but I use it every day, and I have a feeling that 1,000 years from now, people will be using it every day, too.
You were involved in a piece that I read from earlier this year. They'd asked you to speculate or comment about what aliens, if they exist, might look like. What do you think about the nature of beings that might be out there? There was some research done by a man called Professor Simon Conway Morris, a fellow at St John's College in the UK 3 years ago. And he thought very strongly that if there are aliens, they would be pretty much like us. On the basis that, and I've never heard of this before, that a human or human-like creature can only evolve in this particular way. A flower will probably evolve to look like a flower that we've seen, a fly flying and buzzing around. There's only one way to make one of those. Something that swims, well, fish have to evolve in that particular way to manipulate themselves through the water. In other words, whatever is out there is likely to look like stuff we know.
Yes, well, Conway Morris has been advocating this for a long time, that E.T. will look kind of like us. I guess Hollywood has listened to him because if you look at the aliens in the movies, they do kind of look like us. I mean, they're upright and they usually have 2 arms, 2 legs, big black eyes, no hair, right? I mean, we're losing our hair. Well, these guys have gone all the way on that. I mean, yeah, it's a somewhat convincing argument because it appeals to what's called convergent evolution. Right, all the predators in the oceans, the fast fish, the barracudas, the sharks, and so forth, they're all shaped like torpedoes. Or maybe you should say that the torpedoes are shaped like barracudas. I don't know, but because that's the shape that can get through the water the fastest for any given expenditure of energy. So that's called convergent evolution. But on the other hand, I think that Conway Morris, while he's a very clever guy, may be missing something here because you can look on the plains of the Serengeti or whatever, and you can see all sorts of critters there, and they're all making a living there on the Serengeti, but they don't all look like one another. I mean, a giraffe doesn't look like a cheetah all that much. So I don't know. I don't find it such a convincing argument. But all that aside, if you say, what does E.T. look like? Well, what are we doing in this century that's really going to change everything? Yeah, we'll understand biology, we'll get people living in space and all that. But we're also inventing our successors. We're making machines that can do tasks that in the past required a human brain. And, they're not very impressive yet, but 50 years from now, they'll be writing the great British novel. So the obvious corollary to that is, well, if the aliens have done the same, then they probably moved beyond biological intelligence to machine intelligence, and those machines may not be on planets sort of like the Earth. So it may be that we're looking for the wrong quarry.
And that's an awful lot more easy to understand now and for us to take on board as humans because of what's happened in the last year or two as we begin to converge with robots and with more and more people saying we might be having brain implants, and that by the time we get 50 years hence, 100 years hence, we will have harmonized and almost been assimilated by robotics. So if that is happening here on Earth, then the chances are if there's a more advanced civilization out there, they will be well down that path.
And they might very well be, although I'm not such a big fan of this idea that we'll just put these chips right in your brain here, and that way you'll be able to instantly remember the names of all those people that you've forgotten and met again at a party somewhere. I mean, we'll do all that, I'm sure. But in the end, you're kind of limited by what you can cram into a skull. Whereas if you develop machine intelligence on its own, you have no such limitations. I mean, why should you be, held to the scale of humans? And the fact that humans die is not an advantage either. So, to me, it's like putting a 4-cylinder engine in a horse. You might have a faster horse, but in the end, you get rid of the horse part and you just build a Maserati.
True enough. Seth Shostak from the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence is here. Just to say again, we're really sorry we lost our digital connection. We have some equipment issues here at the radio station tonight, but we are pursuing those matters and we're continuing by phone with Seth. Coming next, here on The Unexplained at Talk Radio. Stay where you are.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio.
We have ways of making you talk.
AI gets a lot of bad rap. In reality, AI is cutting wastage, it's saving lives, it's helping us understand really complex problems. My sister had been getting progressively worse for 8 or 9 years. In the morning, she'd wake up and she'd almost be fine. She'd be, running around the house, really. By lunchtime, she was in a wheelchair, and by the night, she needed to be fed and taken to the toilet. We started scanning the internet using the same techniques we do with Black Swan to look for people with similar conversations. We used natural language processing to work out, what they really meant and map them to a diagnosis. I remember going to my doctor with this, and we had 3 diseases that we wanted to check, which we'd not checked for. On the top of the list was Parkinson's dystonia, which is completely curable using Alzheimer's drugs. She went on those within 2 weeks, and now she is running marathons. She's got her life back, and this has been 2 or 3 years, and they've been the best 2 or 3 years we've had together.
Yahoo Finance. Business stories that matter.
Cast your mind back and think. Were you ever contacted out of the blue for a pension review? Were you advised to move your work or personal pension into a SIP, self-invested personal pension?
Yes, I was.
You could be due thousands if you were missold. Money Redress are trusted claim specialists in pension and investment mis-selling. They'll manage the whole claim for you on a no payout, no fee basis, so you can't lose. Text WIN to 85077.
Your number's up. Since the 1st of March 2017, more than 26,000 drivers have received 6 points for holding and using their phone while driving. Don't be one of them. Put your phone somewhere you can't pick it up, somewhere you can't see it. The glove compartment. That way, you won't be tempted. Make the glove compartment the phone compartment. Think. Put your phone away.
The Unexplained with Howard Hughes on Talk Radio.
Back to the United States to Seth Shostak of the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This guy's got one of the coolest gigs in the world ever, I think. Something from the Guardian newspaper a year ago, Seth, that I found today. Astronomers searching for signals from alien civilizations have detected 15 powerful repeated radio pulses coming from a dwarf galaxy 3 billion light-years away from Earth. The source of the mysterious signals, known as fast radio bursts, is unknown. Was that just another flap like we've had recently? Was that a small thing? Because there was a lot. I was going back through the media coverage of this. There was a lot of talk about that a year or so ago.
Yes, well, there's still a lot of talk about FRBs, fast radio bursts. They're among the most interesting puzzles in astronomy today. Now, the question that you're really asking is, well, yeah, okay, maybe those are some sort of phenomena in space, some natural phenomena, like, colliding black holes or colliding neutron stars or colliding something. But this one that repeats, obviously, that's not a colliding anything. Because if it collides, it's collided, and it doesn't collide again. So, at least in the case of this one FRB that repeatedly shows up, well, we still don't know what it is. But, there's a tendency that whenever astronomers find something interesting, which is to say new, in the sky, there's always going to be a suggestion that, well, maybe it's due to alien activity. Right? I mean, the pulsars that were discovered in Cambridge in 1967 were called little green men for a while, just almost as a lark. I don't know whether they seriously thought they were little green men, but they were very regular pulses that were coming from these objects, and they thought, that's not nature, that's some sort of intelligence. Well, it turned out to be nature. There's a laundry list of these sorts of things. Quasars, I mean, just many things that when they were first found, Tabby, there's another one. When they're first found, people say, it could be aliens. Well, it could, and one should always check it out. But the track record is not very promising. They've always turned out to be nature.
Yeah, which is a little depressing. Tabby's star, of course, is that anomalous star that brightens and then dims in an unpredictable way. And it's been in the news in the last week, hasn't it? Because it's dimmed unexpectedly again.
Yes. Well, yes, it's kind of random. If it dimmed regularly, we would know what it is. It's a planet that's passing in front of the star. When it dims irregularly and by an enormous amount, I mean, when it was first found, it had the star had dimmed by more than 20%. Well, you can go out and look at the sun. If anybody can see the sun in the UK, you can go out and look at the sun every day. I don't recommend that, but if you did, you would notice that it doesn't change in brightness. It doesn't change in brightness at a level of 1 part in 1,000, right? Whereas this was dimming by 22%. So the question is, what was it? Could it be that some aliens had constructed some giant structure around their planet, around that star, and it was occasionally blocking the light? Well, it could be. But, more observations have strongly suggested that it isn't that, it's just dust. So, I tend to be a little skeptical. People say, oh, this could be aliens. Well, it could be. We should check it out. But so far, it has always been nature, not artificial intelligence.
I mean, the problem is, isn't it, that we keep detecting things that might be. All the way back to the WOW signal and, these fast radio bursts and the neutrinos and everything else. We keep looking out there and finding something that might be. And as we said at the beginning of this, the press gets really excited. People like me reporting news, go into a complete freestyle about it, and then we all have to be led down the hill again. It's like the Grand Old Duke of York, that old English rhyme. The Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men, he marched them up to the top of the hill, and then he had to march them down again. You have to do that all the time, don't you? Does it dispirit you? Does it make you think? No. You sound to me to be one of the most optimistic people in the world, but there must be times when you think this is never going to happen.
No, well, no, obviously I don't think that. I mean, I wouldn't keep this job if I thought there was no hope, right? If I were to do it, I mean, anybody here at the SETI Institute could walk across the street and double their salary by working for one of these, high-tech startups. I'm quite sure of that. So they're doing it because they think that there's some chance of success, for sure. And it's not really discouraging. I mean, another story comes along, hey, here's an interesting signal. Well, we jump right on it. I mean, we've done that in the case of Tabby Star, the WOW signal. There was a planetary system discovered in Belgium, or at least the discovery was led by Belgian astronomers a couple of years ago, called TRAPPIST-1. It's a very interesting planetary system, a great place for ET to hang out if he's there. And, we follow up on these things. So they're really not bad news. They're just interesting news.
Do you think it's going to help us, and we hinted at this at the beginning of the conversation, I want to come back to this, is it going to help your work and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence if and when we get the base on the moon that Mr. Trump was so excited about 6 months ago?
Well, it depends on where they put the base. If they put it on the backside of the moon, right, then that might help, because if you had a big phalanx of radio antennas on the backside of the moon, they would be shielded from all the interference produced on Earth, which we talked about earlier. All the transmitters here, you wouldn't have any problem from those on the backside of the moon, because the moon's in the way. Now, the problem is that it's unlikely they're going to put the settlement on the backside of the moon, because, you have to have communication back and forth with the Earth. I mean, what good is there to have a settlement and they never get the news and you never get any news from them?
Well, unless, of course, you lay a fiber optic cable between them and the other side of the moon.
Yeah, it's been suggested you could do that. But actually what will more likely happen is they'll just put a satellite around the moon. In fact, they're already talking about doing that can relay the messages. In fact, a couple of satellites. Now, suddenly, the backside of the moon isn't very quiet either. So, the backside of the moon would be great for SETI, but it would forestall a lot of other interesting developments that have more appeal to many people.
And will getting to Mars, which we are told in our lifetimes, if we're lucky, is going to happen, will that be a game changer for this search?
I don't think so. I mean, it won't help, the SETI kind of search that we do, where we're looking for signals, either radio waves or flashing flashing lasers, anything like that. I mean, Mars is no closer to the aliens than we are, after all. Mars is only 30 million miles away, and I've got that on my Honda. So, it doesn't take us any closer to the aliens. What it might do, though, it might be that if you actually send people to Mars, they might be able to more quickly dig up any evidence, if there is any evidence, for Martians. Not little green guys walking around, but microbes of some sort. And if you were to find microbes on Mars that were not related to us, they didn't have DNA, they had something else, then you could say at least that, well, biology doesn't look like any kind of miracle. It looks like there's life everywhere. And that would be a boost to SETI for sure.
All of these things, though, require resources, and that means we have to prioritize. I was watching a great documentary last night about the potential that has been discovered on one of the moons of Jupiter, which has a thick ice covering, but beneath that is an ocean. And it's now believed that creatures may exist, even in those extreme conditions, because we've learned about extremophiles, as they're called, on Earth only recently. So it's now believed that forms of life that we can't even envisage, we can only speculate about, might exist below this thick crust of ice. That's one place for us to look, but there are so many others. Are we going to get overwhelmed with places to look?
Well, I don't know what overwhelmed means in this context. I mean, we don't have money to look for all of these, or to look at all of these places. I reckon there are 7 other places in the solar system that might have the conditions for life. And what does that mean? There's some sort of liquid, there's some sort of energy source, there's something to eat, you're a microbe. And it isn't just, for example, Europa, which is one of the moons of Jupiter, which, as you say, is covered with maybe a 10-mile thick sheet of ice. Underneath that is more water than you find in the Atlantic and Pacific. A lot of water. Maybe that water's sterile. Maybe there's something in it. But it's not going to be very big. It's not going to be tuna, because tuna require a lot to eat. and there's not a whole lot of resources down there for anything big to eat. But maybe they're microbes. That would be interesting. But also 2 more moons of Jupiter, Callisto and Ganymede. They might have underground oceans. There are 2 moons of Saturn that are very interesting and might be the first places to look. And then there's the atmosphere of Venus, and, of course, there's Mars. These are all places where there might be life. And, certainly NASA doesn't have enough money to go to all of them. They're trying to decide which one to go to. The Europeans also have plans, and so do Japan and China. So, yeah, we'll explore these, but it may not be too quick.
One of your other excursions into the international headlines over the last year or so, Seth, was where you said, and I think I'm quoting rightly, in a lot of newspapers, if indeed this was a correct quote, and we know sometimes things can be distorted, but you say that you expect to find something within, I think it was 20 years. Was that you? And did you really say that?
Yes, I hear a certain skepticism about what you read in the British papers. I have that skepticism, too. I noticed I was quoted in an obituary about Stephen Hawking, and I thought, this would certainly surprise Stephen Hawking. But
what is it that... Hang on, before we move on from that, what did you say or not?
I don't remember. It had something to do with his. Oh yeah, it was his caveat that we should be careful about not broadcasting into space because, after all, that might be dangerous. That's a whole issue, as you know.
Which is a whole other issue that we could get to. The fact is that we might well make contact, but what we make contact with might well not be to our advantage.
Yes, that's kind of what he was saying there. But on the other hand, to begin with, if we actually pick up a signal coming from anywhere and somebody says, hey, we got to respond to these guys, let's just send a message from our, from our own studios here. Hello, Klingons, this is Earth, and we're, really happy to meet your acquaintance, and we'd love to unload some of our used cars if you guys want to buy them. Whatever we would say, right? He says, don't do that because that tells them where we are, that we're here, and then they launch their interstellar battle wagons, come to Earth, and incinerate the whole planet, which makes many people unhappy. So, that was the nature of that quote.
All right, so I sidetracked you. What about the 20 years?
Yeah, this was a bet that I offered to an audience at a conference in Hamburg, Germany, about 7 or 8 years ago. And what I said was, look, I'll bet all of you a cup of Starbucks, if anybody in the UK knows what that is, a cup of coffee.
Oh, we do.
Do you? Okay. I'll offer you this cup of Starbucks if we don't find E.T. within 24 years. Okay. And, they thought it over, and they thought, well, that's not a bad deal, because either we have something to talk about at the dinner table because they found E.T., or we get a cup of coffee.
So it was a correct quote then?
It was a correct quote, and you might. I have to say that 3 or 4 years ago, the chief scientist for NASA actually sort of purloined this quote, and she suggested that we will find life in the solar system. That's what she meant. Life in the solar system within 20 years, and that was widely reported too. Now you could say why. And in the case of finding life in the solar system, it's just that within 20 years we will have checked out some of these places we were just talking about, right, where you might find microbes. The reason I said that within 24 years we'll pick up a signal from ET was because of the very rapid improvement in technology.
So it is, if you're a betting man, then it's something that it might be worth putting a few pounds or dollars on.
Yes. In fact, I have a bet to the tune of, I don't know whether it's $20 or $100, something that no longer will buy you even a good dinner here in the Silicon Valley, but with the editor of one of the astronomy magazines here.
And what are the current...
whether we're going to find ET.
Okay, and what would you get? Say it happened tomorrow or next year or the year after. What would you, from your $20 outlay, what would you get?
Well, are you asking what $20 would buy? Or are you asking...
Well, no, I'm wondering if you put a formal bet, is it going to give you more money back than you've laid out? Or just $20?
No, it was an even bet.
Okay.
Good thing it wasn't for a lot of money, that's all I'll say.
Okay, so you're not willing to put a lot of money out there on this one, but you think it's going to happen. Some questions from listeners. From Robin in the US, who's a regular listener to my podcast at theunexplained.tv and also supports this radio show on Sundays. Robin asks, and this is something very close to your heart, what kind of outreach programs or interests does SETI have going for children and youth at the moment?
Well, we don't do too much for, the very young, what's called K through 12 here in the U.S. I don't know what they call it in England, but, grammar school through, age 18 maybe. Obviously, we do some stuff. I write a lot of articles, and, of course, we have a weekly science radio show. And that's all accessible to high school kids. But once you get above that, we do prepare materials, give a lot of talks. As I say, there'd be articles. There's just a lot of stuff. And that sounds like, okay, apple pie and motherhood, it's good to do. I think it is good to do. But it's also the case that until, or unless, SETI finds the signal, this is, in fact, a way that we give back to the community because kids love the idea of aliens. You yourself said that this is one of the more interesting topics for your listeners. Well, go into any school and ask the kids, do you think there are really aliens out there? And they'll all raise their hand. Of course they will. It's not necessarily an informed response, but they will, because aliens are very interesting, the way dinosaurs are very interesting to young people. So it's a great way to get them interested in science, geology, astronomy, biology, all that stuff.
Robin also would like to know, and I don't know whether this is within your bailiwick, as they say, but any new findings that you're aware of on what came before the Big Bang?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I used to answer it by saying, look, you can't ask that question. Not because I don't know the answer, although that might really have been the case, but it was simply that time is part of the universe, right? Time is a property of the universe, just like the stuff in the universe, right? So before the Big Bang, there was no stuff, and before the Big Bang, there was no time. So it doesn't make any sense to ask, what was there before the Big Bang? These days, people are not very happy about that answer, nor was anybody that I gave it to. And it may be that there's kind of a meta-universe. There's, that our universe is just one of many, many, many. I mean, I couldn't say enough many.
So this is the multiverse theory that Stephen Hawking was working on.
Yeah, many people. It's a great idea because it circumvents a very disturbing problem. If you figure our universe is the only one, then you're confronted with the question of, well, why is our universe so great for the existence of life? I mean, maybe you don't think it's so great for the existence of life, but, you're alive, right? And so why is it that all the physics of our universe allows things like stars and planets and, downtown Swindon or whatever? That sounds semi-miraculous. But if you have a gazillion universes, and they all have slightly different properties, well, it's like buying a gazillion lottery tickets, Most of them are losers, but some of them are winners. And so that's the appeal of them.
That's what we hope for. Listen, I never thought we'd get Swindon into this conversation. Very quickly, question from my good friend and former radio colleague, now living in Los Angeles, Cara Noble, who I used to work with on a radio station in London. Cara would like to know, and I know Cara's listening. Hello, Cara. When we talked about the moon, why do you think, from the people that you know in the astronomical community, we didn't put a great spurt on and go back to the moon in a hurry? We left it for so long.
Well, I think that the reasons are very kind of mundane. The U.S. went to the moon because, John Kennedy said we're going to the moon. And the reason he said we're going to the moon was not because he had a tremendous interest in the geology of the Mariah on the moon or anything like that. But he was in a race with the Soviet Union to show them that we, really could bury them, if you will, from a technological and scientific perspective. So it was a political move. And once we had gotten to the moon, there were plans, as you know, to extend the Apollo program and to keep going back to the moon. And all that was, canceled. The last, I don't know what it was, 3 or 4 missions to land people on the moon were canceled for 2 reasons. One, it's dangerous to send people to the moon. And if you sent some Apollo astronauts toward the moon and they died, something terrible happened, that would be bad.
We're definitely out of time. My producer, Cass, is now starting to bite her nails, so I've got to go. Paul Ross is next here on Talk Radio. This has been The Unexplained. My name is Howard Hughes. I am in London. Thank you very much for being part of this. Thank you to Cass, the producer. Thank you to Hayley Hayes for doing the setup on this show. Thank you to Holly for doing the technical production. And thank you to you for being part of this. You can email me through my website, theunexplained.tv. Until next we meet here, please stay safe, please stay calm, and above all, please stay in touch. Thank you. Take care. Good night.
Do you have a project of Jurassic proportions? Get new T-Rex tape. All-weather, works longer, holds stronger. T-Rex tape is formulated with a super aggressive adhesive that gives it a better grip than standard duct tapes, so it can stick to the roughest, dirtiest surfaces indoors and out. Made with UV-resistant material, T-Rex tape will stand the test of time, even in extreme weather. T-Rex tape, ferociously strong. Feel the strength. Available at all good stores or visit trextape.co.uk to find a retailer near you.
Welcome to EE Sports Talk. In today's... Shut up! Not you, Rio. But listen, the amazing new Samsung Galaxy S9 on the EE comes with 2 years access to the BT Sport app. UEFA Champions League on the S9? Get it! It also shoots in super slow-mo and low light. I'm speechless, Kev. A speechless radio host? It's a game changer. Amazing new S9 with 2 years sport on a max plan.
Only with 24-month consumer max plans, £5 a month on selected other plans. iOS 8, Android 4.3 or Windows 10 and TV license required. Other terms apply. See ee.co.uk/terms.
Hello, I'm your smoke alarm. I'm just hanging out up here on the ceiling. Could you possibly get up here and test me by pressing my button? I meant kind of like now. You seem to spend a lot of time pressing buttons on your phone. But can your phone wake you and your family up in the night to save your lives? Because I can, if I'm working. So remembering to test me is crucial. How about we take it from the top? Hello? I'm your smoke alarm. Please test me now.
Smoke alarms. They need to work to keep you safe. Press to test.
monthly is best.
From fitting taps to fixing fuse boxes, there's a local hero for that. And from plastering walls to painting windows, there's a local hero for that. It's easy to book a trusted tradesperson at localheroes.com. Plus, all work comes with a 12-month British Gas guarantee. Join the thousands across the UK who've already used a local hero. Search Local Heroes.
From the Sky News Centre at 1, Jeremy Corbyn says he's sincerely sorry for the pain caused by pockets of anti-Semitism within Labour. The party leader has been criticised over his apparent support for the artist of what some consider an anti-Semitic mural. Jewish community leaders have said they'll protest outside Parliament later to show that enough is enough. Labour's Shadow Transport Secretary Andy MacDonald has been